December the 3rd, 2019, Ocoee City Commission meeting. We'll have the invocation. Pledge of allegiance will be by Commissioner Fershner, and the roll call. I'll do the invocation. Stand, please. Blessed Father, thank you for this evening, for our coming together to do our work for the city and the citizens. And please ask you to watch over our citizens and our people in the country, especially the firefighters and the police and the first responders. Take in your wishes to make sure that everything goes as the way it should go. We come here tonight to try to do what's right for the city and the citizens of the city of Ocoee. We ask for your help and your guidance. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Brunson?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Mayor Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Fershner?
Here.
Commissioner Oliver?
Here.
Okay. No presentations. Staff reports.
Just one issue, Mayor. We do have an emergency item before you this evening. It's titled Duke Energy Easement on City Property. This is basically conveying an easement to Duke Energy so they can put in the street lighting and the street lighting infrastructure on the street for the Inspiration development. The street was not included as part of the plat, therefore Duke had no way to know that that was a public street, so they asked us to issue them an easement. And basically, that's what this does. We're asking for your approval.
All right. Any commissioners have any comments on it? Not. Do we need a motion, Rob?
Yes, please.
All right. I need a motion for this recommendation.
I'll make a motion for the recommendation.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Oliver, seconded by Commissioner Fershner for the Duke Energy easement on city property. Any more comments? If not, let's vote. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing else this evening.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Commissioners' announcements. Commissioner Oliver.
All right. I have a couple announcements to make on the agenda. First item I'd like to do is I would like to add a couple of emergency items on the agenda. I'd like to voice a couple of emergency items. I would like to add on the consensus agenda, item number 14-1 and item number 14-2 on the consent agenda. Item 14-1 would be approval for an administrative policy to require any city-sponsored events to require commission approval before placing it on the city's calendar. And item number 2, or item number 14-2, is approval to remove the Founders Day from the Founders Day event from the calendar, from the November 2020 calendar, and reschedule it to a different month in fiscal year 2020.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Item 14 is regarding Fuller's Cross Road. 14.1, I think, and 14.2 would have to be under Fuller's Cross Road. Those aren't.
You'd have to do 15.
Well, it'll be 15, and everything else will shift down in the agenda then. Or it becomes 14-1 and 14-2. So
The
the direction will be
14-1
either come 14-1-2 or just 15.
I'm gonna let the lawyer.
Yeah, I
city lawyer
think
speak.
these are items, if you're bringing an item before the commission, I don't know that we need to include those as on a consent agenda, but a separate item. You can either address them now, or if you want to address them later in the meeting, but I think these would be separate from the consent agenda.
I would like to actually see if I can add this to the consent agenda, because there probably need to be comments to be made for these items prior to the end of our meeting.
Well, you can bring them up during the meeting in your part, and we can bring them up and discuss them, and then if we have to, we can vote on them.
So
You think
what?
you're saying there will not be comments? Or
No,
there will be
I actually want to get them added to the consent agenda. I would like to verbalize them on the consent agenda.
Okay, because the consent agenda, we don't discuss items on the consent agenda.
We pull them though, and then discuss them,
Right.
okay?
So if we're, if
So
you
I-
anticipate there's going to be discussion on the items,
Yes.
then let's just bring them up,
Okay.
either bring them up now.
Okay, well, let's just bring them up now then. We can take them off the consent agenda, but actually.
Just go ahead and bring them
down.
up. Go ahead and
Okay,
talk
so the
about it.
first item would be to approval of the administrative policy to require any city-sponsored event to be required or require permission from the commission approval before placing on the city's calendar. That's the first item. And then the second item would be just to approve the removal of the Founder's Day event from the November 2020 event calendar and reschedule it to a different month in fiscal year 2020.
All right, let's discuss the first one first. The administrative policy. Commissioners? Commissioner Branson?
Well, funny you mention, what is the policy for the city when it comes to city-sponsored events is the question I would have. Maybe the city manager can address that.
I'm thinking, Commissioner, the only city-sponsored events I think that typically we would put on the calendar would be Spring Fling and Founder's Day. I think those are,
Parade.
MLK parade?
Parade, Martin Luther King parade.
yeah, and a lot of those things, some of them, they're on the actual holiday, so they're just automatically scheduled on that holiday. Like the Martin Luther King parade is scheduled on that day. And there's a couple more. Perhaps Commissioner Wilson can tell us how the Spring Fling date is chosen. I'm not quite sure.
How we choose it.
Yeah, how you choose
The
it.
spring fling is chosen, it's usually, we keep it in the month of March. We do look at the school schedule to ensure that we're not going to conflict with a school vacation because we are trying to bring families together. So that's one of the aspects. We look at the other activities that might be going on during March on a weekend, so that we, again, the purpose of the spring fling is to foster families and the community involvement. So when you do that, you try to make the schedule appropriate to where it fits in with other we're not conflicting with other activities that would happen close to the park or close to the community. We've had problems where schools have had spring flings the same day, and again, you're trying to bring the community in. So we try to be aware. That's how the decisions are made.
Okay, but this, we specifically talking about getting events on the calendar. Is that, this is what I wrote down.
Yeah, when people want to use, they go over there and put in for the dates, look for the dates and put in for what they want to do. We usually have, the one about Founder's Day is in November. We always had it in November. We changed it around. Pretty much it's always sometime ranging in the 3-week periods. Nothing to do with any dates. It's something to do with it shifting around. And it's in 25 years, it was in November 2nd twice.
Okay,
So
well,
it was reserved for November 6th and the 7th this coming year.
so is there a city policy on how venues are reserved for events?
Well, you go put in for it, like I said. You go put in for it.
Okay,
Put
so,
your time in for it.
So you're saying it's first come, first served on the calendar?
What?
You say it's first come, first served on the
That's
calendar?
what's been.
Okay.
Always been.
So when I made a motion to have the Ocoee High School event added to our calendar, it was shot down.
By who?
By this commission.
I don't
They
know.
said we were not gonna put that on our calendar. Yes, we
What's
did
not-
that.
It
What-
wasn't a
and-
city.
Wait a minute, back up a minute. What part was canceled?
It wasn't, anything wasn't canceled.
No, what are you talking about, football? Or Ocoee?
Nothing was canceled. All I was saying was that when I made a motion that we add the Ocoee High School graduation to our calendar, this commission decided that that was not a good
That's-
idea. We were not going to put it on our calendar. But I had to come before the commission just to have it added to the calendar because I couldn't add it on our official calendar.
That's a different thing than going over and having a function. The Ocoee High School has their function every year.
We're not talking about, we're talking about adding items to the calendar. That's what we're talking about.
That's
We're
what
not
I'm
talking
trying to tell
about,
you, Commissioner.
we're talking about adding items to the calendar. I had to get permission to do that.
No,
And we decided not to do that.
no, what you asked is who would go to the.
No. I asked for it to be put on a
Well, then
calendar
ask them
officially.
again, because I don't,
And it was shot down by this commission. I asked for a consensus vote. We said no.
what?
So now I'm coming back to this and saying, why are we, where some events you can put on the calendar automatically, In other events, you have to ask for permission to do so.
I don't know why you asked to have
But-
that,
but-
because you
but-
can go to the high school graduation anytime you want.
Okay, well,
They don't have it at this place, Commissioner.
let's just cut to the chase. The reason
Yeah.
we're here is the fact that you scheduled the Founder's Day event.
I
We
did.
had, we signed a proclamation by your hand, am I not right?
Yeah.
You signed a proclamation. In that proclamation, it stated that the first week in November would be reserved for the memory of the Ocoee massacre. Now, this year, you came around here to try to take the Ocoee massacre.
did not.
This year, you scheduled
No.
this first week in November to try to downgrade or to desecrate the memory of the Ocoee massacre, the 100-year celebration. And I don't understand. When I asked you last month, what is the HRDB doing in the last meeting in
I told
November?
you the guy would
said
be
no.
here tonight to explain it
You
to
said you didn't know.
No, I did not.
Yes.
I do know.
Okay.
But it was not my responsibility.
all
I'm
right.
not,
All
I'm
right.
not the member on the board that
But,
tells you.
well, right
They're
now,
sitting here tonight, sir.
I'm putting a motion on the floor to have that date removed, to have the Founder's Day
I don't
removed from that
have-
day.
I do
And I'm
not
also
have
putting a motion on the floor to
November
have,
the 31st and the 1st has
to
been
have
put in
approval
for
for
by
the
Mr.
administrative
Bill
policy to
Black.
require
It's already
that the
been put in.
city-sponsored event to require city commission approval before placing any event on the calendar. So there's two motions on the floor right now.
Too
We've
late now,
discussed it,
it's
and I
already
think
been
that there's members in the audience that they deserve to be able to speak on this
They
before
can
we
speak.
vote on it.
But I'm telling you, the dates were put in for November, we told,
It-
let you talk. You know, the dates were put in for, and we told Senator Bracy when he came, that this year, that our HRD board was having the function on November, the first weekend in November. They put in for that date, for November, I think it's October the 31st and November the 1st. So I put in for the Founder's Day through the group, we voted on having it November the 6th and 7th. So that's the dates that's been set up, they've been done.
Well, again, there's still a motion on the floor. It's not done yet.
But it is.
Until this commission votes.
Those are, and one's been paid, one's got a deposit on it, sir. So do you want to?
And it's mighty strange, that you would book Founder's Day. It's mighty strange, no, sir, point of order, you're out of order.
No, I'm not.
It's mighty strange that you would book this event.
You out of order,
Last year, you didn't book it until June.
You're out of order,
May I ask a
And this year,
question?
you have to book it, well, go ahead.
you're out of order.
All right.
May I
Go
ask
ahead,
a question?
Commissioner Wilson.
Okay. I want to go back, Commissioner Oliver, to the first thing you mentioned about the city calendar and how to get things on the city calendar. I think if you look through the city calendar, if I am correct, the reason we didn't want, I will just tell you the reason I would not be in favor of putting the school's high school graduation on, because the calendar predominantly has, which I think not predominantly, it has all city functions only on it. And if we start opening it up to the school, or we start opening up to other items on the calendar, to put it on the calendar, it would no longer be just the City of Ocoee calendar, okay? So, I mean, I want to address that part with you, because if you look at it, you only see things that are happening within the city. Red light camera hearings, Spring Fling didn't make it, we'll be on the next one, but the Spring Fling's on here. The different events that are going on within the city. When you start going into the school board, that's their own calendar. And if you want to, as a citizen, to write it in, there's a little square, you can write as much as you want in. But I just don't feel as though if we open it up, we then open it up to the middle school, the elementary school, everyone who wants to put something on our calendar, to where it's no longer just the City of Ocoee calendar, it's a general calendar. And that's probably the reason, I remember you bringing that up, and I didn't feel it was appropriate, because this is the OCPS issue, not ours, and if we want to attend, we'll write it in our calendar. That was one of the factors. So addressing that, I would hope you understand why I would say no, because I don't want to bring other entities into it. If I want to write it in, I will, and that's why I keep this, okay?
Well, great, thank you for, your opinion. Thank you for stepping up, because that's the exact same thing you said when I brought it up. Not that you don't remember, but thank you so much for
remember.
that part. And I understand where you're coming from, but again, I stand on my first conviction was the high school is named after our city. I mean, and if I recall, there was quite a bit of fight to name that school Ocoee High School. And I just thought that when schools graduating, and all the elected officials are showing up for the high schools in their city, and when you get to Ocoee High School, no one showed up.
No one
then I
invited
kind of had an issue with that.
But no one invited me. I will tell you that,
As an elected official, you
I-
shouldn't have to be invited.
no.
You should be able to
No,
go
I
there
don't-
as an elected official because it's your school that was named for your namesake of your city.
No, I don't go unless I'm invited, because I'm a firm believer I don't crash parties. But I don't go unless you invite me, because a lot of times, they have other people they've invited. And, this is a time for the families to be there with their students.
I did have a conversation with our school board member, and they're expecting the elected officials to show up.
Well, if
because
they
of
want to
this.
invite me, you can tell her, if they want to invite me, I'll be happy to, if I have the
Invite
available
me.
time. But I haven't been actually invited.
Okay,
I
ma-
believe that's a family function, and if they want if they don't really need to see me, I think they're there to see their children. That's just a personal opinion.
if I could recapture,
All right.
if I could
Yeah.
recapture, I think we went off on a tangent. I just think we did. We went from talking about city-sponsored events seeking approval to stuff that's on our calendar. So what is the city's policy on city-sponsored events? Anything that the municipality gives monies to, whether they're in kind, whether we waive fees, or we actually give funding to, what is that policy, or does the city have a policy for approving those type of functions and/or events?
I think on those type of events where the city is a sponsor or making a contribution or waiving a fee, those all come before the city commission, and that is approved by the city commission prior to happening. There's no, I don't believe there's any policy that gives the city manager the right to do that. All of that comes before the city commission. When it comes to Founder's Day or Spring Fling or deciding on what date we do those or the parades, again, I don't know that we have a policy that says, this is how you get it on the calendar. I think just historically, the way it's been done is whoever the committee is for that particular event meets and figures out a date that works and then checks with the city to see what facilities are available and then books it. I don't think we have any policy in the city or any procedure that I'm aware of that brings it before the city commission for approval, which I think is what Commissioner Oliver is asking for, is before scheduling city function events, that those dates come before the city commission for approval.
Well, I think, and that's, I think, is what we're talking about, because as you just mentioned, if the city has any skin in the game, if you will, if they've waived fees or sponsored an event, it generally comes before the commission for approval. Is that
Yes.
okay? Now, I'm not sure if that's what Commissioner Oliver is talking about, because that's what I thought it was. But then we went off down this rabbit hole, and I tried to come back. It was painful to sit here and listen, but I did. So here we are. So I would send it back to Commissioner Oliver to restate what it is that he's asking for.
Basically, the reason for this action or this agenda item to come before the commission is the fact that you have the mayor putting items on agenda that he knows that these dates were set based on a proclamation that he signed. We talked about this last year. We sat here in the same diocese and we spoke about this proclamation that he signed, stating that the memories of the Ocoee Massacre would be, anything to do with that would be done the first week in November. That's stated. If you want to read the proclamation, it does state that. But the fact of the matter is, now you've taken Founder's Day and moved it to cover those dates. And Founder's Day does not celebrate the memory of the Ocoee Massacre at all.
All right, now
So-
it's my turn.
so-
You talked a while ago, you
But
talked now.
you cut me off.
Yes, sir, I did. You talked a while ago, so You asked to explain
Well,
that.
no, he brought it back to me, he brought it back to me for comments. But he brought it back to me for comments, and I wasn't finished.
Let's get
I
it
was-
to
I
the
was-
public. October the 31st and the 1st.
Point of order,
we
sir.
did the
You're cutting me
proclamation.
off. It's a point of order.
The proclamation says, next year on November the 1st weekend, it'll be our HRD board putting on the July period, which, member Mr. Maxwell and Kathleen Brown explained, that's the date they put down for the July period celebration. No desecration or anything else. We've been working on that for 3 years. I went to Montgomery, Alabama. I went to Gainesville, Florida. We've done everything we can do to go along and do what it's supposed to be done, the way it's supposed to be. And not Johnny come lately. It was done for 3 years. They've been working on it. The date is set, and we told Senator Bracey last year that it would be, this year, our board would be putting it on the first weekend in November. The Founder's Day is November the 6th and 7th.
The first week in November.
No, it's not. It's the second week. It's the second weekend in November. So it's not the same weekend, sir. It's the second week. So now, if Commissioner Wilson wants to change that, or Commissioner Brenson wants to change that, or you, or Commissioner Furter, we'll talk about it. That is not when it's happening. The celebration thing is picked out for the 31st and 1st of,
According to this
of
calendar
October.
here, the 6th and 7th is the first weekend in
No, it's
November.
not. No, it's not. The 31st is Saturday, the 1st is
That's
Sunday.
October.
No, so 31st is October, the 1st is Sunday.
The first weekend in November
That's
is
still
the 6th and
November.
7th.
Sunday the
You're
1st is
gonna
November.
change the calendar?
Well, it's not the second. You thought you wanted to be near the second. That's what they're trying to do, Commissioner. I'm not gonna sit over and argue with you
I'm
all
saying
night.
the first weekend.
You know, you've been working on this since you got here, so it's not gonna change. If you want us to vote on it, we'll call for a vote.
Okay,
We'll call for a vote.
I think the citizens have a right to speak.
I got nothing, we're gonna call,
HRD as well.
it's gonna be who up here. And I'll tell you about the citizens, I have had umpteen calls and emails about that from citizens.
Yes.
So if you wanna put it out to the public, then we'll have a public meeting and bring them all here.
Well,
Because if
well,
you
well,
read some
before
of the
we
rap
vote,
raise,
they have a right
if
to
you
speak
read
before
some
we
of the
vote.
rap raise, sir, you will see what they said about it.
Well, I don't listen to
So,
that.
now, if you,
I don't
we're
read
gonna
that-
ask the
that
commissioners,
stuff.
if you wanna change Founder's Day and not have it, not do anything, that's fine with me. I won't have to give you 40 tickets to come to it.
Okay.
So, you know, if you want to.
That's
make
because I
sure you
support-
were
that's
there
because
and
that's
celebrated
because I
40,
support you.
make sure he was there and
That's because I
celebrated
support it.
40
That's
tickets.
absolutely
Yes,
correct.
sir.
I support it.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
know.
Just like you
So,
should be
all right,
supporting
we're gonna
the
we're
Ocoee
gonna call
massacre.
for it.
Well,
You're gonna
how
call
are you
for
going to
a
call for a
motion.
vote and
You
not
wanna
going
make
to
a
allow
motion.
people to speak
You
before you
wanna make-
vote?
no, sir.
No, that's
No,
not
sir.
correct. You're out of
It's not a
order.
public hearing.
You're, according to Robert's Rules of Order,
No, sir.
the public has the right to speak before this commission votes.
Do you want to make a motion? Anybody want to make a motion?
The motion's already on the floor.
No, well, it's died for lack of second. Let's move on.
The motion,
There was
it
no
didn't die.
second,
It didn't
sir.
die. Hold on,
Yes,
it's not
it did.
dead. It is
It's
not dead.
dead.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
It
It's died.
says who?
It
Is
died.
there a
I
time
said it.
limit?
The
What
mayor
is
said it.
what is the time limit on that?
If you
On
never know,
second-
if you know the Robert's Rule of
the-
Order, the time limit's up.
Before
All
we
right,
vote,
let's
the
move on to your
citizens
next
have a
item.
right to speak before
What's
we
your
vote
next,
on
number
anything.
two? What was your number 2 item? What was your number 2 item?
And we can't get a second on the motion?
No, sir, you didn't. What's your
I'll
number 2
second it.
item?
It's second. There you go.
Who
There's a
second?
I did.
You did it too late. I said it was over.
It's not too late. It's still on the floor.
What is the rule?
Oh, Counselor,
motion's still on the
what
floor.
is the issue on this?
All right, listen, if you want to make a motion again, make the motion again, and I'll call for the
Mayor,
second.
this is a
No,
disgrace.
make the
as
motion
what's hap-
again, and I'll call for the second.
Okay. I would like to make the motion for the third time to approve an administrative policy to require any city-sponsored event to require the commission approval before placing
That's gonna be
the
for
item on the
everybody.
on the city calendar.
Yeah.
And then I will also put a motion on the floor to approve the removal of Founder's Day
Let's
from
do
November
the
20.
first motion first, sir.
Okay, we can do that.
Do
first.
the first motion
Yes,
first.
sir, yes, sir. We can
All
do
right,
that.
do a second. I guess you are,
I'll
Commissioner
second it.
Benson, right? Huh?
Yes, I second it.
All right. Motion made and seconded by Commissioner
So,
Benson.
so tell me why the
Now,
citizen can't speak before.
All
we
in favor?
vote.
That's,
So no, you're out of order, sir. I mean, if you're
Am
gonna
I-
go by Robert's Rule of Order, they have the right to speak
Commissioner,
before we vote.
if this isn't a public hearing, this isn't,
so be quiet.
the public can have a right to speak. If you wanna put something on the agenda,
Did I not speak to put this on the agenda, sir? Did I not say that this should be an agenda item?
Motion's on the floor.
A verbal agenda, there's nothing in our ordinance that say that we cannot put a
Motion's on the floor.
verbalized motion in our consent agenda. We just had an emergency
I'm gonna
motion
call
that's
for
added
a
right here
motion.
today.
Anybody- All in favor of
We just added an
Commissioner
emergency motion
Oliver's
right here today. So
Wait,
why can't
I have,
we actually have a
I have a
verbalized
comment.
motion?
I have a comment.
All right,
Agenda
thank you,
item.
Commissioner.
Okay, yeah, this is getting painful.
Wait, wait,
I'm
This
gonna
is very,
agree with
very
you.
painful because we shouldn't be having this
Okay,
conversation.
hold on. I'm almost gonna ask for a 5-minute break because it's getting a little wild up here. I think I'll ask for that after a few minutes. Okay, thank you. I understand where you're going, but I don't understand where it's not what we already do. So I feel as though what you're asking for is already there. Because I don't think anything happens up here when we plan an event without it coming before us. Okay? When anything is city-sponsored, Chris, the Spring Fling is about 13 or 14 years old. I'm sorry, I, at this point, don't remember, but it's over 10 years old. When I first brought, when the group that was interested in it brought that before the commission, they accepted it. And I think that what happens is, I don't see where I honestly don't understand your motion, because I think we already do that. I really think what you're arguing here, and I'm sorry to say, is it's over Founder's Day. I don't think it's over, and that's another issue. But I
And
think what,
said that.
right, but
said
I
let's
think
cut
that
the chase, and that's what I said.
you're somewhat mixing apples and oranges here, because I think that when you're asking for this, it's not, it's something we already do. I think we all come forward. We put on, there's 3 clubs in town. We do the shred event with the City of Ocoee Police Department, the Shred to Protect. All right, last year was our first event. Before we ever did that, we came before the commission and asked their approval. Okay, I think most everything that we do as events they do come before the commission for approval. So I can't really understand this motion. I don't know whether to say yes because we already do it, or no because we already do it.
We already do it.
Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry to say, but I don't see anything that we're not doing.
When we can take an
But
event.
let's
and
deal with
just-
Spring Fling separate. I think the whole issue here, I can feel a tension. It's Spring Fling, not Spring Fling, Founder's Day, excuse me. No problem with Spring Fling,
Gotcha.
okay? All right, the tension I feel is Founder's Day. If we could address Founder's Day separate.
That's what I'm
This right
trying to
here,
address.
but no, but you're getting too many things going together. I don't feel as though this motion that you have is really relevant because we're already doing it. I don't think any of us do anything, any events that we don't come before the commission, or the public wants to do something, they come before the commission and get the support of the city. So, again, I'm torn between a yes and no, because I think we already do it.
Okay, well, again.
May I?
Again, if we move forward, and let's just say next year, because again, you have the Founder's Day event that we approved the entertainment for the Founder's Day event. This was in June, July timeframe?
No, starting January.
We didn't approve that, we didn't approve the entertainment to then, but the calendar event, you didn't put it on the calendar until around, I think, May. I've checked it, you didn't put it on the calendar until May of last year, but this particular year, I'm sorry, but this particular year, you decided to put it out a year in advance. And again, I understand why you did that. But nonetheless, the issue, as you stated, Commissioner Wilson, the real issue is the fact that that date has been placed on the calendar, just willy-nilly, arbitrary to what's been put on this proclamation. And I'm actually making a motion that we remove that item and have it rescheduled for another month.
What-
That's
A
not
different
our
month in the
motion
year, you
right
got 12 months.
Yeah, let me ask, okay. Founder's Day, that is a City of Ocoee sponsored event, right? We either upfront monies and/or waive fees. So because of that, I think per city attorney, those are type of things items that should come before the commission for a vote. Is that correct?
No, I think that's Commissioner Oliver's motion, is that those type of city-sponsored events would come before the city commission to approve the dates.
Okay, but earlier, I asked that similar question. I said, when we give monies,
The waiver of fees and contributions by the city, those all come before the commission to approve.
right, okay, with that said,
Commissioner
okay,
Oliver's motion
yeah,
is specific.
his motion notwithstanding, let's talk about that piece. The question I have now is, did the Founder's Day being put on the calendar come before the commission for approval?
It hasn't. Because I asked, I went over there to ask, because I had a check, the guy was gonna reserve it for something else, and I asked him to have it. Because somebody else was gonna put a check in it and pay for it. And I
Okay.
asked him, well, we were needing it for Founder's Day.
Okay,
that's
so-
it. They said, no, we don't have to.
So is there a need for us to vote on that? I'm not, because I'm getting two different dynamics
We
here.
can vote on it, if y'all wanna vote on it.
No, I want to do the right thing here. And what's right is whatever the city policy is.
We've done it for 25 years, Mr. President. It's always been somewhere in that area.
Right, I'm not talking specifically about an event. I'm talking about what is the city policy on events.
We don't have a policy for city commission to approve dates to put it on the calendar.
No.
That's what Commissioner Oliver's motion
Okay.
is, that before we put an item, a city-sponsored event on the calendar, it comes before the city commission for approval.
Yeah. Motion's on the floor.
Well, I think should be, okay, I agree with that. Okay.
Motion's on the floor, Commissioner. All right, all in favor of Commissioner Oliver's motion, signify.
So the public cannot speak on this
No,
motion
sir.
before we vote
No,
on it?
sir. All in favor of
So, wait a minute,
Commissioner Oliver, I'm asking.
So my question is, could you
All in
tell me,
favor?
show me where it
All in
is in our
favor of
policy
keeping
that
vote?
state that the public cannot speak before we vote? I mean, that's just democratic. I mean, that's a democracy that we live in. Before we vote, the citizens should have the right to speak before this commission,
Commissioners,
before we make
motion's
any
over.
vote, before we do anything about their tax
Vote.
dollars or anything for that matter.
Let's vote. You wanna vote? Vote.
The motion carries.
Well,
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
I hate
All
to
right.
say this, but if you're looking back there before you voted, we shouldn't be looking back there.
I was already up there.
Okay, but I mean, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that, just because I don't make a point not to look back there.
The
'cause I
motion
don't wanna say
carries.
anything.
Okay, Mayor, can we move on?
The dates.
No, that ain't what that motion was.
It's too late for that.
The motion was to
No.
develop a policy.
It's already been voted on.
No,
It's already been voted on. It carries.
No, yeah, we
No,
can.
hold on now.
If he voted for it, he can change it, sir. He can bring it back up.
What is the
The
motion?
motion was that before placing an item on the city calendar, that the dates, that a city-sponsored event, that the dates come before the city commission for approval.
Not for the date, no. It's the policy of us approving a date that's presented to us,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Yes,
And that's being done now, correct?
yes.
It's not being done now.
No.
But
Which
the
events?
dates for Founder's Day, the dates for Spring Fling are not coming before the city commission for approval prior to putting those on the calendar.
Huh?
I'll leave it.
All right, that's fine. All right.
So now the next motion?
Do I bring a vote?
The next motion that I place on the floor is approval to remove the Founder's Day from the November 2020 calendar and reschedule it to a different month in fiscal year 2020.
All right, that's a motion. Do you hear a second?
May I make a comment? You're saying that it should change to a different month. Is it a different month or a different day or weekend?
Well, take it out of November, put it in a different month. You got 11 months there.
I won't be doing it, which is fine with me.
It's just a motion on the floor. It should be public comment because we have a motion on the floor.
I'm going back and forth, I'm just asking about this, because I believe there's a compromise here that could make some sense, I'm just asking for public comment.
Well, I already said none, so he said
You
not.
said no to the first one, but this one too?
Well, if they want to put it in, no, I don't think so, because we didn't do it for the first one. So I apologize. You can bring it up when you come up later.
Okay, sir.
Good. This is the date, it's November the 6th or 7th. If that's not the date, I won't be doing it, so. And that's fine with me, because it's a lot of work. If you think you want to get rid of it, that's fine with me. So if you vote for that, that's what you're doing. So it's just like from now on, Commissioner Wilson,
I guess I have to make the motion to bring Spring Fling and the shred event up.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think you should.
it gets to a point where we've taken away the planning. taking away the spontaneity of the
Yeah.
event, and in the spring fling, it's
Well,
mostly volunteers.
It's a good event, and if that's what they want to do is not have it, then we could not have it. It's not, we don't need to move it. I moved it back away from November the 2nd, because that's where everybody complained.
I don't think that we should not have it, because again, I enjoy the event just like you enjoy the event.
You won't be enjoying it when we do it.
Well, I'm just saying, I enjoy the event.
You can
I
put it
promote
on.
the event.
You
I
can
actually
put it
promote
on.
the event.
You can put it on. I won't be doing
And
it.
I enjoy the event. My
Well,
family goes to this
I'm
event.
not doing it.
And I
That's
I
November
just
6th and
request
7th is
that
time.
I'm asking for something reasonable that we
No,
can just
that is
reschedule
reasonable,
it
sir. It
to
is
another
reasonable.
date. I'm
We
asking
moved
that you would respectfully consider
No, sir,
moving
I
to
did
another
last
date.
year. We moved it. I'd ask you to respectfully consider we did move it. It seems to me it's just an adversarial point. that
Yeah,
you're
because
trying to
you
make
have
to cause trouble with that.
100
Let me
you have a-
finish. It's talked a long time, and if we can vote on that right now. But that doesn't matter, because the commissioners are gonna vote to give me the date or not give me the date. That's what we're gonna vote on now. The date is put in for November 6th and 7th. That's the date.
We have two members of HRDB here that can maybe talk about this event and maybe
They will,
the Founder's Day event and maybe moving. I think that would be,
No, sir.
it would be
They don't,
conducive to this
No, sir. That
commission
ain't not what they
to
wanna
be able
do.
to listen to public comments before we vote on anything.
no,
That's
we
all.
can vote on this one now. This is the one for November the 6th and 7th. Do we have Founder's Day on November the 6th and 7th? He's saying take it away. His motion is.
I did not say
Did you
take
get
it
a
away.
second?
I did not say take it
said
away.
take the day
I
away.
simply said remove
did-
it from the
but take
calendar
it
from the
away.
6th and 7th and reschedule it to a different month in fiscal year 2020.
Not that I have anything to do with it. You want to second this one too?
No?
No, again,
Because right now it
Restate-
stands on
restate-
that
re-
date,
Yeah, it stands on November 6th and 7th.
which is really goes against the proclamation that
No,
you
sir, it
signed.
does not have anything to do with the proclamation. No, sir, it does not. And I helped with the proclamation, sir.
All right,
It does not have anything to do with the proclamation.
okay.
So no second. Dies from a lack of second. Stays on November 6th and 7th.
well, no, I'm
Well,
contemplating,
make a second.
I'm contemplating, because I had comment, and
Okay.
my
Go ahead.
comments
I'm sorry.
were-
Go
was, and again, my question is, do we have to change it to a different month? Because fiscal year 2020
Different date.
ends.
If that's the compromise, if we need to leave it in November, then that's fine. How about a different date?
No. No, sir.
So there's no
That's the date.
compromise.
Well, there is compromise. We moved it from November 2nd. Yes, there is
November
compromise.
2nd in 2020 is not gonna work for
November
Founder's
2nd, we
Day
moved it
because
from the- it
that's on a Monday.
It would have been that weekend, sir. It would have been that weekend. That's the weekend we'd have had it, no matter if it had been the 30th, 31st, or 1st. That's the weekend we'd have had it. That's why I said, if you go back and look at all the dates, Commissioner Wilson knows that. He knows.
I will tell you that if I may, I was on, before I was commissioner, I was on the committee for Founder's Day. And it would get changed frequently. One year we changed it because it was so hot one year at that date that we changed it to a later date. The first I think we went from the end of October to the first one in November, trying to second guess the weather. We didn't want it to be so hot, so we thought we'd move to the first week in November. And it's pretty much stayed in that general area, but a lot of it, I believe, when I was on the committee, was based on weather. Because when it was in October,
Has
it
a
was
lot
hot
to
as
do
can
with
be. And it took away all the fun of it because you were cooking out there.
This is Founder's Day. When was the city founded? What month was the city founded?
Doesn't have
19
anything to do with the date.
1925, I believe.
In May of 1925.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what May, I know it was
100 degrees.
about
What is the
1925.
6th and 7th conflicting with?
Nothing.
It is conflicting
Somewhere
with
in
well, first and foremost, we have the HRDB here, and up until last month, they didn't even have a date as to when they were actually going to do
All
their
right,
event.
all right.
So
I'd like-
now we
now,
have, no, wait a minute,
Council-
because I asked you
Crown,
what they were going to do,
would you
and
please
you
come to
said
the
you did not
podium?
know.
Bill?
Wait a minute, you just said,
No,
wait a
I
minute.
won't
didn't
bring
you
them to the podium because you just made a
But-
misstatement.
but you
sir.
just said
You just made a
that you're not
misstatement.
opening the floor for public,
Step up
you
to
have
the
other
podium.
members from the
I want
HRDB
to
as well. You
straighten out
can't
the
speak
lie
for
you
everybody.
just made, sir.
Are there other members of the HRDB
You
here that would like to
just
speak?
made a
I say
mistake,
stand
sir.
up and speak for
They're
the
not.
HRDB as well.
No.
When did you
I
find out
make the
about,
call if it comes
when
up,
we were
you
gonna
know.
have something for
You asked
the HRDB, so they can stand with the HRDB?
Commissioner, you're out of order.
So there's other
All right,
members here
what
that
did he
stand
just
with
make you say? I'm not recognizing you, sir,
No,
so you
he's
can
a
sit
member
down.
of the HRDB board, so
Sit
he should
down.
be able to
I'm not
speak.
recognizing you. Bill,
He's on the HRDB.
I know where he's at.
He can speak.
No, sir.
Let him speak.
He's on HRD.
Bill,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, stand there and make some
Yeah,
comments
I
to what
want
he
to
just
hear
made
what
a
anyone
comment on.
has to say that is in opposition to.
Bill, go back up and say it.
No, please, Mr. Maxwell, go ahead.
Is there someone who can put my presentation on?
I want you to make the comment on what he made the comment of. That's why I called you up now. You get to that other later. Yep, y'all hadn't had any dates set for this. Is what he made the station.
This is untrue. This is a lie by whomever concocted it.
That's me. And when I asked you if this diocese.
I told you that I was
You said you did not
Sir,
know.
I knew.
You
I
said-
told,
but wait,
sir,
wait,
I
wait,
told
wait,
you
wait.
I was not
You
discussing.
said you did not know. You did
wish
not
to
say that. You said
participate.
you did not know.
You,
I can
what,
make
Bill,
reference too.
what was your statement, Kathleen? Would you make that statement also?
Yeah, we've had plans for years.
It is for you.
Oh, it's been planned for years.
What?
It's been planned for years.
This
Yes,
game's been
all
played
right.
for years.
Yes,
Dr. Crown?
Yes.
Go with the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
all right. All right, we'll get back to your presentation
Okay.
later. All right, November 6th, November 7th. You won't find a date? Y'all want to get rid of it? Get rid of it. Wrapped up.
You had members from the audience come speak.
Sir, you've had enough. We moving on.
I think that,
There's going to be public comments later. They can get up and talk.
in light of all fairness, I
Sir.
think that someone else should be able to speak to the HRDB
No,
as well.
I just wanted them to make a statement back to
Okay,
your
well, can other people
misstatement.
make a statement
No.
as well?
No,
I
because
think
they
we
weren't
need-
there
I-
when we did it.
Mayor, I think if we took about a 2-minute break.
No, ma'am. I want you to, we're gonna move on. It's now November 6th and 7th. It didn't change.
Well, with
So
the advent of having someone speak to this from the,
they can speak, sir, during the public comments again.
no, I'm saying, but you brought someone else to the podium, so I'm not
I
sure.
brought them because of one statement, sir. The statement he made that was not correct. The other gentleman I know is on the board. He was not there when those dates were set. He wasn't there as a member. So, no. He don't know what they said. He wasn't there. So,
Okay,
All right.
city attorney, what is
Commissioner First.
this something that,
Commissioner First. You'll be you to minute, just a minute, okay?
okay,
Commissioner First.
I'd like to bring an item up for consideration by the commission. Just after 2 weeks ago, we went to the National League of Cities, and we all heard various and sundry different presentations and workshops, and a lot of them were good, and a lot of them we could use here. But it occurred to me once again that we don't have the ability, due to the Sunshine Law, to sit down and discuss different items. I would like to ask for your consideration to schedule regular workshops, such as Winter Garden does, an hour before our regular commission meetings. Have it advertised, open to the public, so it is considered in the sunshine, but it gives us the ability to sit down with issues like this, what Commissioner Oliver just brought up, where we could discuss it. And it doesn't have to be contentious. You can come or you don't have to come. We don't need a quorum, but it gives us the opportunity to discuss different issues before it comes up here to the dais in the commission meeting where we have to vote on things. What are your considerations on that?
We'd have to ask the lawyer if it's legal.
Sure, we have workshops from time to time. It's certainly appropriate as long as it's noticed. And then it qualifies for, under the Sunshine Law. We did workshops when we were doing planning City Hall. I believe we've done other workshops in the past. Certainly appropriate to schedule workshops to.
I would just think that it would give us a little less formal atmosphere where we can talk and discuss ideas before they're formally presented up here on the dais to us to actually vote on. I'd like to hear what some of the commissioners would think of that idea.
You
I-
think they'd be,
Go on, go.
I think it's a great idea.
I think they'd be maybe less contentious, should we say? I don't know if they would be. They'd be informal, but once a month, I mean, I do work. I think we moved back the meeting to 6:15 at one point, but doing it the same night as our meeting, maybe once every 3 months would be great. But again, I do work, so again, getting here 5:15, which means a little earlier, getting ready, so it could be, it could and couldn't be an issue, but, I mean, I'm sure I can work it out.
I believe that that would be an excellent way to get some issues resolved when it comes to agenda items and things, matters of discussion before our meetings. So I really like that idea, to be able to have open discussion with the public invited, so we can actually have public comment as well. There can be some dialogue there, and by the time we have our meeting, I think we can come to some kind of a consensus as to how we're going to move forward through our meeting.
Exactly. We can decide whether things should be placed on the agenda or just discuss ideas. What would we have to do in order to make that happen?
Probably the city attorney.
Wait a minute, we have,
I don't know, Scott, if you want to take that or not. You all can say for the next X meetings in a row, let's try that and see how it works. I think by consensus, if you do, we would post it, and that way we would be in the sunshine. If you're ready to discuss a more formal policy that we could put together to enact to, make sure before every commission meeting we do something like that, or you could just tell us,
Once a
let's
month.
do it every meeting for the next month or 2 or 6 to see how it works. I think it's up to the commission, whatever way you want to
I think
move forward.
that is an excellent way for us to even start framing our strategic planning, being able to discuss these things, maybe put one little small item there, and we can tackle that as we go through our workshops.
We could discuss all those things openly and, not have to worry about how we present it to the public or how we come across. We can have open conversation about it. Do we need,
The open,
Do you need a
Well,
motion?
motion or
the open,
consent?
We still have one motion on the floor.
Make a
The open
motion,
conversation.
whatever you want, whatever the structure is you want, whether that's by consensus of the board or vote.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we,
I'm sorry, we still have one motion on the floor, Commissioner, first. We have not resolved the motion about the
Date.
the Founder's Day event, the actual 6th and 7th. That motion is
it
sitting
died
on
of
the floor.
lack of second.
I don't think you got a
Yeah.
second.
Did it die of lack of second? There was no second?
It did.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I'll make a motion that we schedule a workshop lasting for an hour before the next several commission meetings. Have it advertised and noticed properly, and we'll just see how it goes from there. If we want to continue it or modify it. That's my motion.
Motion been made by Commissioner Forster to have a prior, is it set time limit?
An hour at the most.
An hour time limit, starting at 5:15. All right. It's gonna be the same discussion you're having here.
I know.
Just, all right. Here's a second.
A second motion.
Motion made, second by Commissioner Hall. Any more comments?
yes.
I'm,
You mentioned every meeting for the next so many meetings. I
know.
think that every meeting, you don't think it's gonna get, that workshop is gonna get like this gets? You don't anticipate, I mean, because there's only so much arguing that a person can take, okay? There's only so much, we are showing our residents a horrible side of us up here. I mean, okay,
Okay, no, you're right. We're showing a horrible side of us up here, and it's not, we do it on the camera, and you get told by people how you look, and we don't want to present ourselves that way. We want to present ourselves as a unified city. So you can do it, I was just,
Well,
but,
first,
and the thing is, so I'm just concerned, I don't want these meetings to give me heartburn before the next meeting. And I also don't want it every meeting because, I can't really get here every meeting.
Let's make it, how about if we make it the first commission meeting of the month? And I think that's why I'm offering this up, is that we can talk and air our grievances and everything else beforehand, and maybe come to some kind of conclusion, so we don't
Okay.
come up here and we bicker and argue. We sit in there in the conference room
no, it's
before the
open to
meeting.
It's open to the public.
Yes.
Yeah?
Same day,
Yes.
they'll be out here.
Well, we sit in the conference room before each meeting, and we smile at each other and say pleasantries and everything, and then we come out here and we bicker like little children. Maybe
Yeah.
if we talk about it beforehand, we can come to some kind of conclusions, or at least discuss what should be put on future agendas to vote on, and what items we don't even want to talk about.
Sure, give it a try.
Well, well, yeah, and I agree with you. I think one of the challenges we have is the sunshine law. We don't have an opportunity to discuss these matters beforehand.
Right.
And so when we say we're showing the public a different side of us, well, I think we should show the public a different
Yeah.
side of us, that we care. And we care enough to rant and rave, and
That's
we
right.
care enough to bicker back and forth, because that's our responsibility. My responsibility is not Team Brinson, Team Commissioner Brinson, or Team Commission. My responsibility is to Team Ocoee. And in doing that, I must push back any time that I agree and or disagree with something that's presented here on the dais, because oftentimes, if not 99.8% of the time, it's the first time I've heard about it. And so this is the time that I have before me to push back. And if the public doesn't like the fact that I'm up here pushing back, even though I try to be calm, cool, and collected, that's too bad, because that's my job. My job is to make sure that I'm doing what's best for the municipality moving forward. And I can't do that by sitting up here trying to get along with everybody who's sitting up here. Having additional meetings, I think, is a good idea, because we can have it in the sunshine. We can work out some of those and iron out some of those wrinkles prior to getting up here. But bickering is part of the program. That's what we do. I've been in corporate America. I've been in boardrooms. I've been in federal government where I've seen behind the scenes what they do. But then they get in front of the cameras and as Commissioner First said, they exchange pleasantries. We don't have that option, because the sunshine law prevents us from having that option. So let's not fool ourselves thinking that we're up here to get along, because we are not. We are not. So with some of the things that have been discussed this evening, they're contentious, because, you know, they're starting to be more and more addressed seemingly every time we come together as a commission. But it's something that we can't keep putting a Band-Aid on. We need to make the changes that we need to make to this, so we can move past this and get this past us, so we can move on to the other great things that our municipality is doing.
The part about contention, sometimes it's not just happened now, it's been over the years, there's always some time that happens. There's points of discussion. If you don't think so, look at everybody else up above. There's always some discord.
Absolutely.
As long as you end up with a vote, you gotta have it. That's why there's 5 people sits up here, because you can come to a 3-2 vote or whatever vote you need, but that's where you have to do. There's been a lot of times over the years when you vote on things that not always are what you wanna vote on, and it comes to be where you work on doing that project. But it seems to me that's not what we wanna do. So, you know, there's things that can be solved. If it's not solved, we work it out and try to start over. But I'm not particularly for that, because I think all it's gonna do is bring it where you do it there, and then bring it back here. That's just, time wasted. And like Commissioner Wilson says, I know she works, and I don't know about the rest of it, but I know you don't, and I don't. But that's what it's gonna be, and I won't be voting for it, because that's just it's nonsense. You come here and discuss it in the public. I don't wanna go back in the back room and discuss it. I'd rather discuss it out here in the front, where everybody can hear it. So I wouldn't vote for it, so.
think that it's a great idea to be able to have those pre-discussions. However, just going back to the motion that just failed, I believe that by not removing that item, it's going to cause even more contention within the city and separation within the city. And I hate to see that. I hate to say that. I wish that we could all come together in some type of agreement that will be conducive to honor those that have suffered in the Ocoee massacre, as well as being able to continue to have Founder's Day and have a great time at that event. So I think that it's great when we can actually discuss things, but also I think it's even greater when we can compromise. I think it's even greater that if we can actually come to the table and say, what are we willing to bend and stretch and contort ourselves on in the interest of our citizens, in the interest in keeping our citizens as one Ocoee, as opposed to 2 separate Ocoees or 3 separate Ocoees or 4 separate Ocoees. This is in the interest of all of us, bringing us all together. And again, I celebrate Founder's Day just like everyone else celebrates Founder's Day, and I think it brings a lot of people together. So I've never, ever wanted to abandon or abolish Founder's Day in any way, shape, or form. But what I would like, I would ask that we have a 100-year celebration coming up for the Ocoee Massacre, which is it is a pivotal, it's a big event. It's an event that people will come far and wide to celebrate because we are honoring our past, and we're also bridging that gap and showing people where we are right now as citizens, as one Ocoee. But I think that by that motion not passing, I believe that it is going to cause more contention and more separation.
All right, just for a point of interest, what's that got to do with what we were talking about? That has nothing, Commissioner. That is, again, the same reason what he was talking about. You went right back over that whole 15 minutes we did a while ago about something else. We were talking about the motion this commissioner had, sir. That's what you should have been discussing.
And that's what I was discussing.
All right, you're done. No, you got what you did. All right, motion's on there. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Fershner, you wanted to revise the motion to once a month?
Yeah, once a month would be fine to start.
All right, is there a second to that? Huh?
Yeah. I think there was a second.
Who?
I think the
On the
Commissioner,
revised motion.
oh, I
Or
think,
revised motion?
because the first motion, Commissioner Oliver second, correct?
First one, Commissioner Oliver.
Okay, so now we're going to the second one. I'm willing to try it. I'll second it.
All right, motion been
Don't
made.
know if it's gonna,
Mayor, can I get a point of clarification?
We gotta go back to the amendment, huh?
Point of clarification, typically for a workshop, we would not televise it, and I don't know what the intention is to have that televised or not televised, but without specific direction, we wouldn't televise a workshop.
No, and I would suggest that we don't.
and I'll second that. I mean, I honestly think we're not putting our best foot forward when we do that. I think that we need, I think that when you go to something like from NLC, if you learn something, you bring it back, you try it. If we find it doesn't work, then we just I guess we have to come back according to our motion earlier, and the earlier motion of setting something on the calendar, we have to come back and change it, correct? Is that what happens from your first motion, Commissioner Oliver, that if we don't decide to continue with this, in order to get it off the calendar, we have to come back and vote to get rid of it? Is that the intent of the very first thing an hour ago?
That would be the intent, because based on what you just said, you're right. If it doesn't work, for us, then we make a motion, we come back and make a motion, and we change it to something that would work for the commission.
Okay.
Nobody voted on that, or the motion a while ago, so.
Which
You
one was
wanna
that?
make the motion to vote on that date, I'm fine with it.
What, the date?
Yeah,
No, we never seconded that.
All right.
Wait, so that never,
Huh?
that died.
okay.
Now it's going to, Commissioner, if I'm correct, Commissioner,
Commissioner
I need a
Forster,
note
we're gonna
here,
have to do it as an amendment to the motion. The motion was made with the amendment to change it. We have to do the amendment
This
first.
this would be a workshop occurring the first commission, an hour before the first commission meeting
Right,
each month.
yeah. That's the amendment
And that's been
with the
seconded.
second. All right, all in favor of that? Vote. All right, now we're gonna go to the regular motion to have that, all right?
well,
No, that's it.
That's it? We don't need that?
Thank you.
Okay. That's good. That's first
First meeting of the month.
First meeting of the month, 5:15. All right,
I think it's my turn.
your turn.
I guess I have a couple motions here because of what the motion that passed from Commissioner Oliver, that on March 29th of 2020, or March 28th, excuse me, let me get that correct, that the city will be, I'm making the motion that the city will hold the Spring Fling on March 28th of 2020. Can I combine two things together? And that on March 14th, that the city will be sponsoring the Shred to Protect event, which is hosted with 3 clubs and sponsored by the Ocoee Police Department. So I guess I have to get my events in early.
March the 14th and March the 28th.
March 14th of 2020 is the Shred to Protect event, and March 28th of 2020 is the Spring Fling. So this kind of, so I guess we can't plan anything without bringing it before the commission, even though it's been there for 15 years, so that's fine. So I made that motion.
Motion made that March the 14th will be for the shred event. That's with the joint thing with Lions and the police, right?
Lions Police, it's at the police department and sponsored by the 3 clubs, the Ocoee Lions Club, the Ocoee Women's Club, and the Ocoee Rotary.
All right, and then March the 28th,
Will be
Spring Fling.
the Spring Fling event.
All right, the motion made by Commissioner Wilson, do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner First.
I have a comment.
All right, any more comments?
I have a comment. I'm going to make sure that I'm tracking here. Are we saying that any event that's on a calendar or any event that the city sponsors or gives monies to and/or waive fees for needs to come before the commission? That's the question I have, because I don't think, other than Spring Fling, like the shred event, I don't think the city is providing any monetary.
Well, they have
The police department. It's with the police department. It's called the Shred to Protect event, and it's one of their featured, it is going to be the second event, second annual, and it is an event through the police department with the 3 clubs.
Right, but is there monies associated with that?
The police department does, because they have police officers come in and work the event. They're putting on tables, they
Okay.
advertise it, they work with the 3 clubs in order to make this an event that will be a benefit to our residents, to get rid of their personal items that are, that they should not be just disposing of in the trash.
Okay.
And that was brought up last year, approving it, because we closed the street for the event.
All right, any more comments? Everybody in favor of the motion, please say vote. Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
That's it for now, thank you.
All right.
I'm good.
All right, announcements. The 19th Annual Santa is taking place December the 3rd, parade, Operation Center, 5th, place December the 3rd. The 5th, 9th, 11th, 17th, and 19th. Santa Claus and his helpers will visit the neighborhoods, tossing candy and spreading holiday cheer to children and families. When the float arrives, residents are being encouraged to give Santa new, unwrapped toys for the Ocoee Police Department, holiday toys for kids in need. For a complete list of the 64 subdivisions Santa will visit, go to ocoee.org or call the Ocoee Fire Department at 407-905-3140. An Evening with Santa is this Friday, December the 6th, starting at 6:30 p.m. at the Lakeshore Center. Free pizza dinner with Santa and arts and crafts, letter writing stations, and more. Space is limited to 50 kids, and pre-registration is required. Call 407-905-3180 to register. And they've just about got it full. All right, the City of Ocoee and the Ocoee Lions Club will present the 39th Annual Ocoee Christmas Parade on Saturday, December 7th at 10 a.m. The parade will start at the intersection of McGuire Road and Enterprise Street and end at Bill Breeze Park. In lieu of entry fees, parade participants have been asked to bring new unwrapped toys that will be donated to the Ocoee Police Department's holiday Toys for Kids in Need. All right, we want to send a retirement farewell Ken Goldberg. Is Ken back there? Who is our broadcast engineer for Ocoee TV. This is his last day with the city. He's been with the city for 21 years, recording our city commission, planning and zoning and code enforcement meetings. Ken, can you come out for a minute so we can recognize you, please? Let's all go down front so we can recognize you.
Okay, we'll go down. Can you go down? Can you go down? Or you up here? No, seriously.
Little goodie bag, I don't know. Might be some. I get to keep the keys to City Hall? Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Talk to Al with somebody about that. All right, if the commissioners wants to do this, because somebody asked about one of the ones to be earlier, we can do these, all the ones that are not tied to a issue that's on the agenda. We can go ahead and let them go ahead and talk, but that's up to the commissioners.
That's fine.
All right, so the ones that are pertaining to something, we'll wait till that comes up. Is that all right? And then, let's see, Bill Maxwell would be the first one, then Reverend Barbara Bay, and then Ralph Groves and Maria Slavinsky. Huh? Did I say that wrong? Maya. Looks like, sorry. I should wear my glasses, I guess, might help. Ooh, yeah, okay. Okay, all right, I'll call you for that other one. All right, sorry. You follow after that young lady, okay? Okay, all right. And then I also have one in here, I'm sorry, and I also have another one here, Sherry Gladney? Oh, okay.
Can everyone in the audience see that? I'm asking that question to determine whether or not we need to lower the light level or the lighting level.
I can just hear it.
Everybody okay with that visually? I guess yes. Mayor, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, my name's William Maxwell. Please excuse my hoarseness. And my purpose of being before you this evening is to talk about 1 November 2020. I'm kind of out of my ballpark right here, so bear with me if I get into a situation where I get mixed up on the slides, but it's pretty clear in my mind. All right, Melanie, where do we go here? I can't even read that little menu drop list over there, so I don't want to exit the show. Keyboard errors? All right, clean that thing up for me, please. Okay. I'm asking the audience whether or not they can see it, and I can barely see it. Ken, that was the left and right, or vertical and? Left and right. Okay. The purpose of this briefing, as is indicated on the slide, is to bring city leaders up to date on the planning efforts that have gone into the design, the development, and execution of a program dedicated to the honor of the memory of the African American citizens whose lives and properties were taken during the 2 and 3 November 1920 Ocoee Election Day massacre. I will also talk about Ocoee's Memorial Marker Installation Program, but prior to doing that, I want to dispel some of the contentious or pretentious allegations I've heard around the city over the last couple of weeks, months, in that we've kind of sat down and did nothing. And I say that those comments would come from individuals who probably have been from day one removed from what it is that we, the active members of the HRDB, have been involved in. So I intend to give you a little planning chronology and history on what I've done and what other members that were affiliated with me in planning for the upcoming recognition of the memorial, or the memorialization of our fallen ancestors. The Human Relations Diversity Board, on the 5th of April 2018, voted and approved the attendance of HRDB members, Chair Crown, Member Dawkins, Maxwell, at the EJI National Memorial unveiling in Montgomery, Alabama. Accompanied by our mayor, we also took along another individual who was Allie Braswell, and we spent 26 through 29 April there gaining knowledge and ideas on how and what we would do in the honor of memorializing individuals who were victims of the 1920 Election Day massacre. In the 3 May 2018 regular meeting of the HRDB, via motion by Chair Crown, second by Member Callaway, created the subcommittee to design, to plan, and develop a program for the installation and unveiling of a memorial marker for the city of Ocoee.
How much time do you think?
I don't know, sir,
we're
but
having this?
whatever you want me to do, I'll sit down or I'll go on.
Is there any way you can just take us to the summary?
I can take you to a summary, but it's going to leave out the guts of what I've worked about the last
I
100 hours on putting together.
In the interest of the other people that want to speak, if we can, just, I would like to hear the guts of it as well, yes. I would like to hear that.
I would like to hear,
We're giving another, 3
Just
to
get a
5 minutes?
consensus
Mayor,
from the commission.
what do you think?
Get a consensus from
I would like to hear what Mr. Maxwell says, because he's with our HRDB board, which we have supported as a board,
me too.
as a commission, and I want to hear what you have done and what you're planning, because I think it's very
Everybody
important
says
to
okay.
me
Go ahead.
to know what you're planning.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioners. The HRDB members who volunteered to serve as members of the subcommittee were members Anderson, Brown, Crown, Dawkins, Hart, Hershaw, and Maxwell. And this is where it gets a little fuzzy because I can't really see what I'm doing right here, so I'm going to have to read some of that to you. But I've spent countless nights, and I don't even want to think about the uncompensated number of hours in trying to do this in such a manner that it would demonstrate some professionalism that would give the city some degree of dignity in going about sponsoring this all-important event. So, on September 10th, 2018, we met at the Eisen Center, and we brainstormed for the memorial marker planning. Intermittent planning meetings have been conducted over the past year as data collection efforts to enrich and enhance our knowledge of Ocoee's past history. Examples of such data collection program planning efforts are as follows. Participation in an invitation in the National Symposium sponsored by the University of Florida on 21 through 23 March 2019, the subcommittee members presented the historical story of Ocoee, 100 years of reconciliation and accountability. On 29 May 2019, the committee members made a presentation of Ocoee, 100 years of reconciliation and accountability, to the staff of the Department of Law from the United States Military Academy, West Point, New York. This was a requested visit and one which we considered of historical significance. On 19 November 2019, we announced in a meeting and convened at City Hall, Room 109 Conference Room, we formulated preliminary plans for the presentation. Now, I don't know how much anyone else in the audience is dedicated to this, and I'm not going to try to even question anyone's dedication. But I've got 14 years of my life dedicated to this very incident, this very situation that we're talking about tonight. And I don't say that braggantly. I say it, I'm a volunteer here because I want to be a volunteer here. And when it reaches the point that I cannot volunteer and do so from the spirit of willingness that volunteerism is originated, then I will politely resign. One of the first things that we did on 10 May, the subcommittee, that was 10 May 2018, by the way. The subcommittee held its first meeting at the Eisen Center and unanimously elected Bill Maxwell as chair of the Memorial Marker Subcommittee. At its first meeting, the subcommittee formed a mission statement as follows. Our mission is to create and dedicate a memorial marker to those who died and lost their livelihoods in the 1920 Ocoee massacre in an effort to honor their memory and heal the wound. We have lived up to the execution of that mission statement to the best of my ability, so help me God. The memorial application process began at that point in time, and we went ahead with that application process. And today I'm proud to announce to you that as of 22 November 2019, the State Department of the State Department of Historical Resources reviewed, evaluated, and approved the application status of our application for a memorial marker. I spoke with Mr. Hart personally on the phone, as indicated there in my briefing, and he assured me that the administrative details affiliated with getting the order off the ground is now in process, and that all things being considered, we probably will get this monument completed within a 6 or 8 week time frame, depending on the number of issues or other items of that nature that they have to deal with. But we have that approval, and I think that's something, if you're in the audience and affiliated with this, you ought to applaud for. Commissioners and Mayor, you've gone through the bits and pieces of the marker design and the development and the installation. You've also given up your approval to the taxation, the textual message that is to be conveyed on this device that we're putting out there. So I'm not going to put you through all of the nuts and bolts of that, but what I really want to say to you is on this screen right here is a sample of the marker. The only difference is that what you see here displayed is that our marker will be on a blue background, as I'm told by the project coordinator, and the print will be in white. The Marker Review Committee, these are the 3 individuals who looked at the situation and made a positive decision in terms of honoring our request. How much does the marker cost? Well, if we were doing text on one side, it would cost about $2,000. If we were, and we are doing it at their request on both sides. We'd initially given a generic description of voter biases and terror lynchings and all of the things that happened at that point in time, and the committee sent it back and said, this is so significant, we think that you ought to do a continuation on the backside of what this plaque is conveying. So it's going to cost us $2,330 according to Mr. Michael Hart. And of course, we are the applicant city, makes us responsible for paying for it. What's included in cost of the marker? You're going to get a sign, you're going to get a post that's 7 feet concrete, and shipping charges. And the plaque itself, as well as the inscription on both sides of the text, will be included in that pricing. This will give you some indication in terms of the physical dimensions of the historical memorial marker. Now, you want to know, and you're asking yourself, well, why is this guy standing here in front of us talking about all of these things that are not related to the program? We have been tasked with that responsibility from day one to come up with this device. Prior to formulating any type of program conceptually, we really had to know what we were talking about. So we've gone to great lengths, I wouldn't even bore you with the details, to come up with what this is all about, who is responsible for it, how it's going to look in conjunction with the other monuments that are out in the Memorial Garden, depending on where it's located. Height restriction was one of the things to take into consideration, so we've restricted it. The state has restricted it in its manufacturing process to be 7.5 feet. The adaptation into and among those existing monuments will not be a problem as it relates to size. How long does it take to produce a historic marker? I've already talked with that about to you. The possible delivery date I suggested was perhaps March or April. Mr. Hart thinks it will be sooner. Questions that remain impossible to be answered at this point in time. Production to begin, he couldn't give me a date. Manufacturing to begin, he couldn't give me a date. Projected completion date, none of these questions could be answered by Mr. Hart in our telephone conversation 2 days ago. Now to talk about the program. It's the one that reportedly we have done nothing about. I bifurcated the process by calling part one of the Day of Remembrance program the eulogy. And I think this is one of the most serious events that could ever be touched upon in the history of this town. This is not a time and a day of festivities and frivolities. We're talking about lives that were forever lost. We're talking about deprivation at the lowest level. How would you feel if someone approached your house tonight and threatened you with deadly force? And not only threaten you, but exercise that deadly force. So I'm going to treat it just like I would have. In the committee, we agreed to treat it as we would treat a funeral. Picture this. The ceremony will begin with modified instrumentation, instrumental excerpts of the song, Light a Candle. The Orlando Choral Society choir will be in the background, and that little P in parentheses, for those of you who are non-musically inclined, means pianissimo, soft. And as the instrumental version of this song is faded to a muted state, the choir will vocally crescendo to a forte fortissimo presentation of the song. They will then do a very soft fade away, segueing into lift every voice and sing. That is the opening processional to our program. I'm going to solicit assistance from all of our elementary schools in the acquisition of 100 volunteers. I want the kids involved. We involved them in the essay contest. This is another effort to outreach to the youth of our community to become candle bearers. The dress code we're still working on. I will state the purpose of the event. This is to publicly proclaim an end to the 100-year, age-old drama of Ocoee's sordid and racist history, beginning with acts of violence and terror, lynchings of the African Americans who attempted to exercise their constitutional right to vote, to declare to the world that even one death of any citizen was one too many, but that when a community took the time out to summon and recruit armed, angry white mobsters from every surrounding township and city to come to and brutalize the African American population, that this was morally and socially unacceptable then, now, and forever. And we must say to the world, never again. I believe that's what this ceremony should say. There will be narration by another board member, and that is going to talk about that dreadful day in a manner and a tone of voice that you have not heard before. I want it to be guttural. I want it to be vile. I want you sitting there in your seat to emotionally experience the fear factor that must have gone through the minds of that young black mother who had children, as many of you in the audience will have on that day, not knowing what the outcome would be, listening to the terror of the gunshot. I don't know how many of you have been in combat, but it's a sound that you don't ever forget. I want this to set the stage for everything that is going to take place and follow. The memorial, we believe that with any funeral, with every funeral, that the obituary sums up the life and activities of the individual. So since we don't have a physical victim, we're going to use your approved proclamation to sum up the activities of everything that's involved and that was involved. And we're going to ask Dr. Kathleen Crown to read that during the ceremony in verbatim. I have spoken with Reverend Brian Stamper, PhD, pastor of St. Paul's Church. Pastor Stamper served as co-chair to the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force and was one of the original founders. He has agreed to be our service leader. Keynote speakers, that is a challenge that we, the subcommittee, and I would ask involvement from any elements or entities that can get involved and help us come up with a keynote speaker who has knowledge of the struggles that exist as a voter advocate. Last year in June, we went out to Congressman John Lewis. The response came back negative. He was not available, understandably so, because this is right on the forefront of U.S. election 2020 for a national leader. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, we're in the process right now of communicating with her and her office for her consideration to become our keynote speaker. Who is Congresswoman Terry Sewell? Well, Terry Sewell happens to come from my hometown. Terry Sewell is a representative. She's in her 5th term in the U.S. Congress from the 7th District of Alabama. And hopefully she will give us a favorable nod. But again, it's a national election year. And one of the other people right now who started all of this, EJI Director Brian Stevens. And Mr. Stevenson has some pretty tall demands in terms of what events he will take place in. Typically, he will make himself available for 1 hour, and that fee varies somewhat from $20,000 to $40,000. 20 and 22 November email exchanges with his office if anyone wants to look at the documentation there. There are numerous existing outreaches that I'm in search of right now of a keynote speaker. That is my greatest challenge. So anyone who wants to positively contribute to this event, that's one you can get actively involved in. Eulogy session concludes. As the eulogy session is concluded, the attendees will be led to the memorial marker installation site by the lighted candle-bearing volunteers. There will be selected musical scores directed by Dr. Jeffrey Redding. And I don't know if you're aware, but Dr. Redding, I believe in the last year or so, became the recipient of a Grammy Award. He is world-renowned. Dr. Redding took me to Carnegie Hall 5 years ago and made a change in my life that I could not have otherwise accomplished. But he has verbally consented to provide the musical scene for the entire processional. Okay. Now we're at the unveiling ceremony. The candlelight procession. Now, you're going to ask yourself, well, what time of day are we doing all of this? On a Sunday. It was difficult to try juggling the schedules of those individuals over whom you have absolutely no control. So we selected a time based on the theme that was thought of 4 to 6 p.m. Again, a tough time because a lot of people were going back to evening services. However, we will be in daylight saving times at that point in time. And I think the candlelight procession around the unveiling ceremony of the marker will have a lasting effect. Installing, unveiling, and dedication of the ceremony. We've got some coordinates right now that we submitted on the application, but we know that City Hall is not going to be finished by 1 November 2020. So we're going to have to compromise somewhere in terms of the location. The key here is to put the monument one time so it will not have to be disturbed and reinstalled. So this is a topic that is still flexible and one that is probably going to wind up coming before you, the commission board, to make a decision on whether or not to elect to put it in the Memorial Garden or where else to put it. That is beyond my pay grade. Resource requirements, I formulated a proposed budget in terms of people, in terms of money, and in terms of time. We're looking possibly right now at 3 keynote speakers, whichever one says yes or no. We're looking at possibly 3 professional narrators, and if we got any professional narrators in the house or you happen to be connected to one, we would appreciate you directing him or her our way, and we will gladly audition them and listen to their delivery. 20 ushers will be volunteers. Paul Hershaw, a former member of the committee, no longer a part of us, has access to Boy Scouts, and we probably will ask the Boy Scouts if they will assist us in terms of issues, in terms of getting people to their seats and passing out programs and any other paraphernalia. 100 elementary school kids, as I mentioned, and we're also in need of a videographer and a photographer. Other budget considerations in terms of materials. Whenever you want to make this public, I will provide a copy of it to the city clerk for inclusion in the record. Further budget considerations have been made. And roughly speaking, depending on the availability of speakers, we could be looking at possibly $15,000 to $20,000 to support this program at the level that it should be supported. But hopefully we can find some more reasonable keynote speakers. Perhaps one of you would like to give it a shot. We're currently seeking sponsorships from local merchants. And some of those local merchants I will show you later on. But this is the invited local elected official list, educators and scholars list, dignitaries continued. And just to give you some idea of where we stand with Dr. Redding, this I just happened to share with you a thumbnail sketch of his December candlelight session schedule from 30 November through, I believe, 29 December. I believe he has 17 performances scheduled. So we're blessed to have somebody of his talent in our area that has agreed to come in and participate in a situation as extensive as this one is. Letters to potential sponsors. You look at some of our local community entities there. I think Mr. Newland would probably be one to consider. Martin Marietta, Publix, Walmart, Manheim. We're going to go wherever. Now I'm talking about the cover page. and I've solicited the assistance of 2 local artists. I would like to do something special on the cover page of this event. I want to turn it into a booklet that will be a memorial that individuals can carry away with them as a part of the ceremony. I also want to have included as consideration in the budget the striking and minting of some memorial coins, that every person in attendance would have one placed in his or her hand. This would be a portion of the back of the event, of the booklet. And I'll entertain your questions, please.
Commissioners.
I'm just going to say thank you to you and to the HRDV board, because it does sound like you've put a lot of extensive thought work into this event. And so I guess I just want to say thank you, because I know it's something that we need, and I'm pleased that you're doing a very professional job.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Sure.
Are you in conference with the family of the descendants in regards to this event?
We have not been in conference, but that is definitely a consideration. A member of our board is designated to make the contact with all of the descendants that we know exist in the area, and they will definitely be involved in the overall recognition portion of the program. But as we speak, me, the committee, and I can't speak for the member who is not present, that has the responsibility of making that connection, but I know that that is definitely a part of our scenario.
Yeah, just a quick question. Have we actually started, have that person started making the connections to or contacts to any descendants as of yet?
I believe that individual has provided names of several people in the community that she knows that are in contact with those people, but no, I have not personally.
Oh, okay, all right.
So if you have some leads on that, I'd be happy to follow up on them.
I think we had several events. I think you attended one that we had downtown. There was several
Exactly.
descendants that were there, and I thought that might have been a perfect opportunity to make contact at that point. And that was
Commissioner,
last year.
we would not dare go forward with this event without including as many individuals who are related to anyone that they can identify with. I mean, when we did this in 2007, we had Mr. Perry's granddaughter over at the presentation. And so, we're just not going to ever leave any stone unturned.
Well, I'm not suggesting that you're not.
No.
I'm just asking, have they been contacted yet? And what's the plan on moving forward?
Dr. Crown, do you know the answer?
Guys?
Any further information that you can provide on that?
I personally only know that we have a list of folks. I do not know if they've been
Contacted yet?
That I can't tell you.
Gotcha.
So that I don't know. We haven't discussed it at the meeting.
Will they be a part of the planning? I know you have an excellent presentation here. This is a great presentation. Again, thank you for bringing this to us. Are they going to be a part of the planning portion, or this is just set the way it is now, and they will just be participants?
Well, I don't know I can't foreguess the unknown. But the answer to your question is anyone who comes forward as a member of the group that we're trying to identify will certainly be afforded every courtesy.
Awesome. And just one last question. This event for 2020, when was it actually placed on the city's calendar?
To the best of my knowledge, within the last 60 days.
So within the last 60 days?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that, Commissioner,
Oh,
because...
no, it was just a simple question. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Questions from anybody in the audience?
Ryan Owen. Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
front of people. I do appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you.
I know where you're coming from when it comes to this. I also understand some of the questions and concerns that the commission may have in regards to it. I also, in the beginning of the meeting, was caught a little off guard with the conversations about dates. It seemed a little bit semantic to me to a certain extent. See, I start to look at things from a business perspective. And when we talk about Founders Day, or we talk about this event, which is absolutely important for our community to heal, I start to think about what's best, you know, what weekends are best, what dates are best, how can we maximize, how can we provide the best environment and event for both. So one thing that I did notice when we were talking about it earlier, and something I noticed this year about Founders Day, is it actually fell on the weekend of Halloween. Our city has a great haunted house as well. And I believe we actually closed our haunted house during the 31st and moved the employees to cover Founders Day. So when I look at that as lost revenue for the haunted house, and lost revenue potentially for the city. See, I would have liked to seen, just in my opinion, in that aspect, that the haunted house and Founders Day and that weekend work together. Seems to me like that's a win-win, to say the least, from my perspective. You've got so many people in town. They're here for Founders Day. They can hit up the haunted house. We hear about the calendar, whether the 31st and the 1st is what you guys specifically have in place for this event. Is that correct? In the last 60 days? The 31st and the 1st?
Those are the dates that I talked with the center about.
Okay, excellent. So I look at that, maybe potentially the 31st could detract from individuals who may want to participate in the event that you're talking about, right? Like they're out with their children and they're out and about. We look at Founders Day closing down. So I would like to see, you know, everyone kind of get together and see if we could come up with a solution where everyone's happy, you know? I hear Mr. Oliver talk about the first weekend, and we can talk about whether the first is the Sunday is the first weekend, or the 6th or the 7th is the first weekend. That's all like, you know, hearsay or whatever someone's opinion is. But I think there could be more potential to the event that you speak of on the 6th and 7th, because I would like to see what you're talking about on the 6th, because it's great. And then I would like to see the 7th Sunday as a gospel weekend, a celebration.
Well, I don't have anything to do with what's going on the 6th and the 7th.
I don't, but it's just part of my conversation. I wanted to do it because they kind of, I'm trying to tie them together because they are kind of tied together to a certain extent based upon the conversations I've seen. There's been this weekend, that weekend. Because I think you could do this presentation on a Saturday the 6th, and then, like I said, do a gospel service and a celebration on the 7th, which would take us from a somber, very emotional day to a very celebratory day, moving past it. And then if the weekend prior would be the 29th, the 30th, the 31st, and the 1st would be great for Founders Day, because then it allows the haunted house to be open, and for us to maximize the resources there with people in town at one time. You know, it's just food for thought. I think at the end of the day, I think sometimes we all get caught up, and I'm guilty of it, with emotions, right? But we should try to do what's best for everybody in the community. I don't want your event to be just a single day on a Sunday and not have a very good Saturday, the 31st of Halloween, you know? I'd like to see your event be a nice weekend event.
We'd really like to see that. We're wishing for that.
Yeah, do you think there could be potential changes in dates there possibly?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's all up to the commission and subject to votes, of course. But
let me share with you the rationale behind the selection of 1 November. At the time that this consensus was reached, we weren't really sure whether or not the concept of a memorial marker was going to fly. And I was hell-bent for leather that I would not stand idly by and allow this ticking time scale to elapse to a 100-year mark before something positive was done. I want to be able to say to the audience, 100 years ago tomorrow is when all of this evil, dastardly terror lynching took place. I don't want to look back on tomorrow, on the anniversary date, the 100th year anniversary date, and refer to it then, because I believe it gives credibility to the leadership of this city to say, well, we waited a long time, but we didn't wait 100 years.
There's nothing I can say that would not agree with you
All right.
100%. I just want to say on one closing thing, and it's just merely my opinion,
Yes, sir.
that this seems like a very stark and very important event in the way that you're going about it. I think it's important to have the descendants there, and clearly you guys are going to work through that.
Absolutely.
But as somebody who's lived and raised my family in the city for more than 20 years, I would really like to see it end on a celebratorial note. I think that would be difficult to do since November 1st falls on a Sunday, on a Monday. And it may come to a conclusion in more of a somber remembrance. Maybe that may be the point. I'm not sure that that is the point. I don't think that is. I know you, Bill. But I would like to see us remember and then celebrate that we've moved past. I think that would be
All right,
tough on
I
the
got it.
31st
Cut the
first.
time. Good.
Thank you, sir.
I would suggest this, if I may, Mayor, that you come up with a plan. Come up with something.
The time frame on the dates was the reason it was changed to put Father's Day back was because of they picked that.
No,
weekend.
I was 100, I've heard the 31st and the 1st, Mayor, as you have said, for quite some time. That is not in question. You didn't change it. I don't know of anything that's been changed to affect anything to do with this. I just look at it from the fact that the 31st is Halloween and the 1st is a Sunday. And if we're doing this on a Sunday, then it will give us very little time to celebrate thereafter the event. I would like, personally, to see the event to where we can have that event on one day and have a blowout celebration
All right.
the second day.
I have a question. I know you guys mentioned, we talked about having some contact with some of the family. I believe some of the families out here in the audience tonight. Would it be okay to speak with them or let them speak on if they would be willing to help out with the event?
I have
Would that be
absolutely
okay,
no
with
control over that,
HRDB?
Mayor. I'm here at,
Would that be okay?
I do know they're
Let them-
sitting on the board with that they have talked with, they will be talking to them and mentioned.
Well, we have
setting
some,
up
we
the
have
date.
some in the
I
audience
know-
tonight. Would that be okay?
I understand that, sir.
Yes, sir.
So just give me a minute to finish, will you?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
If, Bill, when you through, I'll let somebody come up.
I'm done,
Okay.
sir. Unless,
If the
subject
person
to your
here fill out a
questions.
form, come up if you want to make a comment. I mean, they're going to be calling you, trying their best to make sure you're here. And I know we've had them here before to talk, so come on up to the podium. We need to fill out a form when you get through, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Johnson. We meet again.
Yes, sir.
We met in Orlando.
Yes, sir.
For the marker laying there, to all the commissioners and to the city officials and to you, the public. My name is Stephen Nunn. I am the great-grandson of July Perry. My grandmother, Caretha Caldwell, is his oldest daughter, who was a witness and perhaps a participant in some ways in a very bad situation. My mother, Geraldine Nunn, could not be here tonight, but I do have my sister, Janice Nunn Nelson, that's here, and we are here to really hear and to express our sentiments of we are excited for the efforts and the energy that's being put forth, not only in the memorial process of the laying of the marker here, but also in the things that takes place even with the July Perry Day and or whatever titles that may be attached to that. We're really excited about that. I think when I reflect, and I'll make this brief, there will never, ever be true reconciliation until there is acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is not always a singular moment or time. Because just like if you are having surgery or you get in a bad accident or you have to have some trauma to your body, it takes time to heal. And while you may feel better, sometimes you have scars to remind you that you had that trauma. And so I want the mayor and the commissioners and the residents of Ocoee, because I live in Tampa, Florida, Tampa Bay Area, to know that we as a portion of the descendants of Ocoee, we, my sister, myself, who had personal relations and conversations exclusively almost with our grandmother, who shared things that she remembered. There are many different opinions and thoughts on what actually took place. And that's great. What we all agree on is it was bad. It was not good for a city, for people, for life, for humanity, because the only race that matters is the human race.
Amen.
That's all. And that's what we're trying to bring and bridge together. So I just wanted to say that I am the president and the board chair for the Julius July Perry Foundation. My sister is our vice president, Pam Grady, who we met, acknowledged to join us and to be a part of our foundation as our executive director. And we are moving aggressively to collaborate, to partner, and to do whatever we need to do and play whatever part we can to assist and to support as everyone is attempting to do. And so that's really what matters, and that's what we really want to see. And I just want to say thank you for what you are doing, and thank you for the conversations you have. You guys have a tough job. There's no doubt about that. You have to make tough decisions, and they're not always agreeable to others that are listening. But what good leader would be a great leader if they did not make tough decisions, whether or not others agreed or not? What good parent would be a good parent if you made decisions concerning your children and your family members did not agree? That's not their child. It's not their job. So we all stay in our lanes with opinions, but at the end of the day, opinions don't mean a hill of beans when facts are required. And the fact is, we're still dealing with an issue that's sensitive and an issue that New Ocoee embraces, because you have people that never lived here, never heard the story. We've had some of those times, Mayor, a few years back. I think we kind of briefly had a conversation. But what was great, more than anything else, we shook hands.
Yeah.
That meant a lot to me.
Amen. Yes,
It still means a lot today. So I will expect in my desires that from the top to the multitudes that are supporting, that we will just continue to forge forward and do the things that we can do with all the support and all the assistance, from even putting this great program together for the marker laying here. Because at the end of the day, it's a marker in Orlando, there's a marker will be in Ocoee, but we will always have a mark in our hearts because lives were lost.
Amen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. I will say that it was a pleasure meeting you both times. It's a pleasure listening to you. I think that truly, and based on what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years, we've worked towards getting to the point where, and everybody knows any life lost is not a life, and like I said, with Brother Maxwell there, I served in a place where I've lost friends. But family is a different thing, and I know that you still, to this day, will think of everything and what your life brought you over because of this. And we truly, and I taught the citizens, this city truly wants to do what's right. And as one of the most important men that you know that's been around that have died was Martin Luther King, and what he said was, can't we all just get along? I mean, that's the truth. I mean, why fight over a date? Why is it a date that has to be so embedded? Because I'd give up the dates for this thing. Now I say it's the Founders Day thing. And it's a thing that, just like that function, we offered Senator Bracey in all good faith to use that. We offered him also to come join with the board and do it as a joint thing. They didn't want to do that at the time. Now, we're offered again to have the foundation be a part and help put this on next year, and whenever they want to do it from then on. But that's why I moved the dates. I did it last year. I did it before because they brought it up, and I said, okay, but they just seems to be this burr that they just got to keep poking me. And if they want me to do away with it, sir, we had 15 to 18,000 people out there. It's a function, and this gentleman here wrote something in the paper that said it wasn't anything to do, I won't read what you said, but you made a good comment in on rent and raise. It's about just being to the citizens, and it's a home place here, and we don't want it to be where it's not good name, and we're one of the most diverse cities in the country, and we want to be. And you're right, there's times we sit up here and argue with each other we shouldn't do, but there's times also that you gotta take it and go on and quit bickering over something that we are gonna do what's right. This gentleman and this lady, I went with them and sit and for hours up in Montgomery, Alabama, listening to things that are just amazing to me, and things that enlighten me that I know that should have never happened that happened. And it's not just in Ocoee, Florida, it's other places. So I want you to know, and I'll make a promise to you, as long as I'm around, we're gonna make sure that's done.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate
And
it.
I hope that you'll be there to speak. So, and I don't, are you a preacher?
Actually, I am.
I would have bet some money on that. But I promise you, as the mayor and as a citizen that lived in this town since 1955, I promise you, we're gonna do what's right.
I appreciate that.
And the date to me is what they told me they wanted, that date. So we set that date up for them and moved everything else where they could have that date. Now, if your group wants to do it another time, right in front of that or back of that, we can work that out. But I would think we could all work together and make it work for all of us.
Amen. I'd like to have that conversation with
Like
everyone.
I say, it's truly a pleasure,
see how we do that.
talking to you at Arletta that day.
Thank you so
And I
much.
thank
And it
you for
wasn't
coming
great.
up.
It was a great event, great
Yes,
time.
sir, it was.
And I'll just say, in closing, after your comments, I'm reminded of two things. One, I love the great song that was recorded by Michael Jackson, and the song says, "It's time to make a change for once in my life." But the real moral of the song was, he said, "I'm talking to the man in the mirror." So if we can look at ourselves in the mirror and we're comfortable, then we're good. But if you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't see who you really should see, that should cause you to be greatly concerned. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always have what you've always had. Got to change it.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Pastor Nunn, for coming out and traveling this far. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you.
You glad to fill the form out too?
I'm just here for my daughter, but I can't sit. I didn't know this was all going to happen. But a date is not just a date. It really isn't. And the date has been known for 100 years. And I think it's really important to take that in consideration when planning other events around such an important recognition. And
That's what we did.
but the 31st and the 1st, isn't that the Founders
That's the
Day?
date, no ma'am, the date they're having, the celebration is the 31st and the 1st.
So I don't understand why, so we are gonna have it on that date, on the 1st. That's the date that it's gonna be.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't understand when we're talking about not having it because of Halloween.
Now, that's not the reason they're not having it.
So
Halloween.
So it's happening on
no,
the 1st?
That's a different thing. It's happening on the 1st.
Okay.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, all right. All right. Ralph Groves, set the clock back and let's start back where we're supposed to be. Put it on the 3 minutes. Mr. Groves?
Yes, sir.
Come on up, sir. Apologize.
Thank you very much. Mayor, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ralph Groves. I'm the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Orange County, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here as an ordinary citizen living in District 1. Okay. And speaking of the commissioner from District 1, I just want to say it's good to see a fellow veteran on the commission, especially one who had a Pentagon assignment like I once had. I'd like to address just for a minute a matter concerning safety of school children at Ocoee High School. The crosswalk adjacent to the school on Crown Point Parkway, on that crosswalk there's a blinking warning light, yellow in color, that needs to be activated by a button. Even when activated, with children in the crosswalk, oftentimes some drivers do not stop. Some zoom through the crosswalk even while children are starting to cross. I myself, while escorting my younger daughter through the crosswalk, experienced a driver zooming right past us within a few feet, narrowly missing us. Someday, a child is going to be run over by a rude, speeding driver. Therefore, I respectfully request the installation of speed bumps at that crosswalk.
Where's that at?
Crown Point Parkway, right adjacent to Ocoee High School.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I see this every day, and I'm just looking at an accident waiting to happen.
Steve Krug, Commissioner Benson, I think Steve would come out and discuss the speed bumps.
I don't think,
Is he back there? Is Steve here?
And also is Deputy Chief
Simon,
Simon's back there as well.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
it's
much.
speed
Thank you very
bumps.
much.
Right,
yeah, Simon
but
also,
it's
yeah.
more than that.
Deputy Chief Simon, come out front, please.
Or Charlie's back there too.
I understand you had sent an email, Commissioner. I didn't, I was just seeing it being forwarded to me. Is this, talking about the crosswalk at up by the school?
Yes, sir.
The new one we just put in?
Adjacent to the school, Crown Point Parkway.
Okay,
Yes, the one right after the roundabout.
right. We just, installed that. It'll probably be an enforcement and education. Most people don't realize that when the light is flashing or someone's in a designated crosswalk, you're to come to a complete stop and let the people go. It's probably gonna be an education.
And we were out there this afternoon doing some education and enforcement in that area. I don't have specifics on what we did, but I do know we had a unit out there today. And we will continue to do that in the coming weeks.
Okay. Yeah, and just so everyone knows, I went out to the school today. I limped around. I met with the principal and the two RSOs out there, Kelly and Bertrand, and informed them what was going on, and also let them know that I had no expectation of them leaving the school to go out there to do any type of patrol, which is why I sent you the email as well, to ensure that, because child safety is important. And the last thing we want is, one of our children or parent or grandparent or whomever to be hit by a car who either wasn't paying attention or was going too fast and they couldn't stop in time. So this is important to me. Public safety is important, but two of the most important parts of safety is our children's safety and elder safety. So I think this is something that hopefully we'll work it out because I think it's not just an educational piece, but also we may have to write some tickets to let people know we're serious about this because that road is well traveled now and is going to get even more traveled, and with that additional cars on the road is going to be more safety issues coming up. So thank you very much, Deputy Chief, for sending people out there, and Director Cruz, thank you.
Who else is next on the list? Speak, I didn't have the list. Okay, if not, Ms. Bay, you're out here on the list. Reverend Barbara Bay. Chris, did you have another item?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Honorable Mayor Johnson, in his absence, Mayor Pro Tem, other commissioners, members of the audience, good evening. My name is Barbara Bay. I am the granddaughter of who were victimized in the Ocoee massacre. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. I thank God for this word because I had written several summaries that I had to throw away and come back and readjust my emotions. Again, my name is Barbara Jean Thornton Bay. I am the first grandchild of the Reverend John Sims and Mrs. Pearl Sims, who were founders of a black settlement in Ocoee, Florida. They were the descendants of slaves. They were law-abiding citizens who wanted a better life for themselves and their children. They were landowners who were truck farmers. As citizens, they had a right to vote. But others thought differently. Grandfather lost his life in the Ocoee massacre of 1920. Grandmother Pearl and her children lost their home. She lost her husband, her provider, children's provider. They lost their father and much more. My dad, David, and his siblings told me time after time after time, it's burned into my soul, that they had to run for their lives through the swamps of West Orange County to a black settlement in Orlando for safety. The night riders, the Ku Klux Klan, came at night with their hoods covering their heads to kill and to plunder. Some of you, I dare say, never had any contact with Ku Klux Klansmen. As a child, we were always harassed by the Ku Klux Klan. My first professional job after graduating from Rollins College was at Ocoee Junior Senior High School. I'm a social scientist by training with an emphasis on history and political science. I am an ordained minister of the gospel, serving as an associate to Pastor Leroy Rose III of the New Covenant Baptist Church of Orlando. I guess preaching is in my blood because my grandfather was a preacher. The Constitution said and says that all men are created equal. The word says that the Creator is no respecter of person. However, some chose to do disbelieve both in the past. And unfortunately, some still do today. I wanted to share this brief synopsis with you about my beloved grandparents, the Sims, so that you will hopefully see how the Founders Day celebration clashing with the massacre memorial service is troubling, to say the best, the least, I'm sorry. Some of us are troubled by the conflation of them in a similar time frame. Even within the month of November, there could be a separation, I believe. It has been reported one of the celebrants for the Founders Day celebration was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and that he was an active participant in the massacre of 1920. And you can check the Orlando Sentinel's records, it's there. I'm asking you, and I've heard some shifts tonight, so thank you. I'm asking you as a granddaughter that the Sims' blood runs through her veins to change those dates. My ancestors' blood cries out from the graves for respect. This is what we're talking about, respect. In this century that they were not given in the last century. Please do the right thing and what is morally correct. And Mr. Mayor, it was Rodney King, not Martin Luther King, who said, "Can't we all get along?"
It was one of the kings.
No, but they were different. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. It was one of them. I will tell you that I appreciate it. I've heard that speech last time you came. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you coming back. You were here once before, and I can't remember exactly when that was.
The night when you...
But the dates, we changed the dates, ma'am, on purpose because of what it was. And I've run out of time, so I appreciate you. We passed out pictures here.
I submitted a picture to you.
Is that your grandmother?
This is my grandmother.
Okay.
Because too often when people talk about the massacre in Ocoee, they only reference July Perry. I'm sorry. There were some other people there. And Pearl Sims was one of them.
Yeah, I don't know, none of the people that was in the 1920 was involved in any Founders Day. They wasn't alive.
No, I said they could have been founders. We don't know who was there because they were murdered. Thank you.
Not at Founders Day. Okay, thank you very much. All right, Sherry Gladney. Sherry Gladney.
To our mayor and commissioners, audience, my name is Cherie Gladney. I am a mom, a wife, and a Ocoee resident. My concern, in light of everything tonight may seem small, but I would like to present my concerns with the rates for the rental of the Lakeshore Center. I support my city in any way. Anytime they call me to sing, I'm a singer. So anytime they call me, I'm there. I'm Johnny on the spot because I love my city. I'm a 9-year resident, but I can't afford to give my husband a birthday celebration in my city. So I looked at Winter Gardens facilities, and because their rates are affordable, they are all booked up. And when I looked at it apples to apples, and you can't really do that, I guess, if you look at schematics and square footage and the type of facilities, I know we can get probably into that more. But just based on the figures, not looking at square footage or anything like that, our facilities on Saturdays were $2,350 more than theirs. For the big room, for the A room, it's $2,050 more than what they charge. And for ballroom A, it was $1,650 more than what they charge. That's a huge gap. And if we are looking for these facilities to be, I mean, I would imagine when you design a building of facilities like that, you want it to be, the goal of that is to have community and family involvement, which is one of the things you mentioned earlier. And the current rates really hinder the working class and general public from benefiting from the usage of those facilities. So I don't have any particular figures or numbers outside of what Winter Gardens is. I don't want to have to go outside of the borders of where I live and serve my community just to have a birthday celebration. So I am, here to speak on behalf. It's like a known thing that it's too expensive, like throughout the community, and I don't think that should be. So I'm just here to ask that be reconsidered and put within a fair time frame, a range where it's attainable for the average Ocoee citizen to be able to use the facilities.
All right.
And take advantage of that.
Well, it'll have to go back before the committee to get studied, and we talked about this before, about maybe giving a small percentage of drop-off to the citizens, but it's nothing like Tanner Auditorium. It's nothing like, the only one I would say it's like is the one in Lake Mary, and it's expensive. These rates cover what our cost is to run the place, ma'am. And if other people are renting it, we keep it rented pretty much. But I mean, there is separate rooms. You can get separations, different parts of it for a smaller amount of money.
I've looked into that, but even the smallest room was on a Saturday. The smallest room was $2,500.
Yeah, well,
and that's for a birthday celebration for 3.5 hours. That's a bit much for a citizen. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but
well, I know, but if the commission wants to vote to change the rates, they can do that. But if and that would be put in the city manager. City manager, then we'll have to bring us they've done 3 cost analysis on this thing, and there's we spend an amount of money off the bond issue to pay for it, and we have to pay for it. So that's one of the reasons the rates, and they are renting it out. I know my neighbor rented it for a wedding. He's paying whatever he's paying. He said he loved it because of what it looks like and everything else. So he's a young married man, so that's what he's doing.
when you call any facility, we're going through with my brother right now, we're planning his wedding. As soon as you mention wedding, you expect to pay those rates, but as a general, when you're just trying to have a celebration on a much smaller scale,
we have another building, man. We have the Adair Center. That is a perfect place to have a birthday party. And the rates are reasonable.
Yeah, but similar facilities to the smallest one you have is still a huge gap between the price and the rates.
Well, the one on Adair Street is cheap, and it's way better than
It should be. I mean, I'm saying in comparison to other facilities just like that.
Not like Tanner Auditorium, no, ma'am.
No, not Tanner. I mean, throughout the city, I've had to kind of branch out because.
Tanner Auditorium, I'm saying Adair Street. I'm not trying to argue with you.
Yeah.
If you went and looked at Adair Street?
Yes, I used to have to vote there. Yes, I know very well.
That's a perfect place to have a birthday party or something like that if you've got a smaller number. I mean, it's according to how much, I don't know, I don't even have that rating.
I believe this is at least the second or third time that this has actually come before the commission, and I believe the last time we spoke about this, the citizen came up and we posed it to the staff to go out and do a cost comparison, but I have not heard a report back from the staff as to what their findings were. We did agree as a commission that we would consider some form of compensation or percentage off for our citizens, but again, I have not heard anything back from staff as of yet. And hopefully, we can get something pretty soon back from staff.
They just did this before we opened it up.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can I finish speaking, please?
Well, I was talking to her myself about the rates, and you started talking.
Okay.
What I would like to finish telling you is these rates were done before we opened the new building, a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
These rates were done. They were brought in front of us to pass. We passed it. Now, I have no problem doing a percentage for citizens, but we also have to cover the cost of what the building is. So we have to figure out what the cost is, and I'll let the assistant city manager talk to you. But we can come back with some kind of percentage where we can do a percentage. But these rates were done right before we opened this building up. All right,
All right, I'll
Greg
try to be very brief. Commissioner Oliver is correct. I was actually sitting on the dais the evening that it came up before. We have done some cost analysis. The mayor's also right. The commission heard and approved the fee structure for that. I wanted to remind the commission that the city manager has the authority under the ordinance to provide discounts as he sees fit. So there are a lot of cases where this could be addressed before someone got to this point. And I want to make that point very clear. And the commission gave him that authority because we had this discussion perhaps before a couple of you got on the board. But the intent of that was to be able to work with people and provide them a discount that was fair, that could be fairly administered across the board depending on the situation. We also, as a practice, we have other facilities depending on what type of event they're looking at. The weekends are the prime time. And our previous direction from the commission had been, you know, we want to get the premium rates for the weekends because we just had someone book a wedding for $4,000. But there are a lot of deals that we could make during the week because we would much rather have someone using it on a weekday than having it sit empty. And those are days that we can really do a lot. We also have a very nice, extremely high-tech community center called the Eisen Center that we could make some serious deals on. And I don't mean to sound like a salesperson up here, but when we got to looking into it, there are facilities that are comparable to ours. We do not consider Tanner Hall comparable to ours at this point. And it's not, and ours compares with the likes of Lake Mary and perhaps Haines City, some of the other bigger ones. But we have a lot of flexibility to be able to do that. And I'd be happy to meet with this young lady and try to work something out with her.
I thank you.
Make sure you get his card.
Definitely.
Thank you. I think we also need to work on a percentage that we can do.
Yeah, we talked about that before, Mayor, too. I think the big thing is, and we've made, you know, as Craig said, we made deals before it gets even, you know, the deals get better as we get closer to the date. Because like Craig said, we much rather give a steep discount than have the building sit empty. I think we've all talked about this several times when the building was first opened, and then prior to embarking upon the expansion to double its size and everything, and you know, specifically the weekends we had talked about was maintaining the fee structure, but specifically Saturday, because every Saturday in the year will probably be booked for a wedding, which is quote-unquote premium. Fridays and Sundays, you know, we have a little more flexibility on during the week. We can really cut a deal with someone if they wanted to do something there. Otherwise, you know, the Eisen Center, nice facility, smaller, something we could also offer to residents. But I know we had looked at a discount structure, and I'm not sure. I thought there was one in there now, but I think your discussion, the time that I wasn't here and Craig was here, was maybe increasing that discount to something a little higher for residents.
Yeah.
And, but we can take another look at this study if you'd like. I'm not sure if it was distributed or not, but they did check with the other comparable facilities, Lake Mary and Haines City and those types, which we would consider comparable. And I think we were right there, or just a little up, under the costs that they had. But I think we can work. If someone wants to call our office or Parks and Rec, we can work and find them something that we think will be affordable, and we'll find them a facility, especially if they're residents.
All right.
Sounds like you have dealt with this before, where you have dealt with residents and been able to give them discounts.
Yeah,
this kind of
we
rate.
can
So
typically find somewhere for them. Like what we said, Saturday in the Lakeshore Center, it's like we don't want to rent it out for $300 because we know 2 days later someone's going to want to pay us $4,000 for it. So, and you know that basically in cost benefit, when we decided what to do with that building and double the size, that was kind of part of the pro forma that we gave to the commission and said, you know, the big bucks are going to be Saturdays and weddings, and that will pay a good chunk of the debt service.
So based on your experience, it would be okay if the staff would just come back with some recommendations for us based on their experience with this maybe come back with some recommendations as to what would be a comparable percentage that we can look at for residents?
Yeah, I think it might be, I think right now it's 10%. I don't know from, you know, what that lady was talking, if 15 or 20 would do it for what she's looking at, you know, when we're talking of those costs on a Saturday at the Lakeshore Center. We can look at the discount structure again, but I think there are other options that are significantly less expensive that for a birthday party for 30 or 40 kids, I think would work out pretty well, actually.
All right, so we need to work up a percentage, bring that back at least.
Okay.
Is it Maya? Maya Zelinsky? Come on down.
Hi, I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible because it is almost 9 and it's a school night and I have homework. So I came in earlier this year to try to get donations for a trip to Budapest, Hungary for the Maccabi Games. And actually, Commissioner Oliver donated to help me get there. Thank you again. And he asked me to come talk about my experience. So when I went there, I was chosen to be a part of Team USA for the Team USA's fencing team. And it was my first time traveling out of the country, and I happened to also go alone, so it was kind of stressful. But it didn't matter that much because I had a lot of teammates, and I met people from the UK, South Africa, Sweden, Germany, and hundreds of other countries. And it helped me grow, and it helped me get out of my, be able to be more comfortable going out of my comfort zone. And now it made me realize I want to travel more and as much as possible to get more experiences like that. And it was a great experience, and I hope I can make more memories like the one on that trip. When I went over there, I happened to win 2 gold medals and 1 silver medal. The next games are in the summer of 2021, and I've already applied. But if I make the team, I'm hoping that I can make it just as great as the first one, the first trip. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on winning the medals. All right.
Mayor, I just want to say one quick item real quick. I just want to thank you for coming back and sharing your experience with us, Maya. Again, this is just a testament as to how we deposit into our youth. This is in hoping that one day you would take this experience and realize what we did for you and come back and share your time and your talent with this city. So we thank you so much for coming back and sharing that with us. This is just a return on our investment. When we invest in our children, this is the product that we get out of that. So thank you again.
All right. Whew. Need to get to, we have one thing here filled out for item 7 on the consent agenda, so we're going to put it in.
I'll strike the number 7, but I would like to make the comment that I made about the bills because you opened up public on that, so I'll strike number 7 from that.
Okay.
And I'd just like to make one quick comment or apology as general. Thank you.
Come on back up. You need to set the timer, you good for a couple minutes?
You can stop looking at it. Okay, I can get it within the 3 minutes. It's all good.
I'm gonna trust you.
All right, perfect. I want to get out of here too. We all got family, and it's been a long night. But I wanted to actually make a comment to Mr. Frank. About 2 meetings ago, we were discussing the City Hall. We were discussing the new building techniques of the City Hall. We needed to approve which particular one we were going to go with. During that period of time, I made some comments in regards to the fact that I didn't feel it was appropriate for a non-elected official to be making decisions in regards to our City Hall improvements. What I did, and I'm sorry for that, sir, what I did is I went and I did some research, okay? And what I didn't understand when it first was unveiling or happening was that we had changed the format that we were going through. Originally, we were having engineers and then using contractors, and it was creating a long-term effect. This new firm that we've chosen to use is an engineering and contracting firm in one. So basically what they do is they're going to be building and needing approvals as they build through the process. Totally different from what the first one is that correct?
Yeah, it's a whole team approach. The architects and everyone are on the same team.
We're on the same
So,
team, right.
yeah.
So that's where I was confused in that particular statement, so I wanted to make sure, you know, that I did point that out. There was one underlining concern that I did have about that, and that was just accountability in regards to whom is making those decisions, because I believe it stated you, Mr. Frank, or whom you designated. Is that correct? Okay. As we stand in City Hall, we built it in 1994. In 2000, we were already having structural integrity issues. Okay. In 2014, I believe we spent about $40,000 to fix cinder block pylons that were underneath the City Hall because it was starting to sink. Is that correct?
I didn't hear the number that you said. I don't.
It was around $40,000
Yeah,
in
that could be right.
2014.
We had about a $500,000 estimate to fix it permanently.
Permanently,
We
right.
knew we would be getting rid of the building because it was sinking, so we did an interim.
Right. But that timeline is correct, sir? 94 we built the building.
Building was
2000
built
we
in
started having
94.
issues. 2014 we could have spent $500,000. We chose to spend 40
Yeah, it
to
was
kind of
late.
step.
It was 2012, 2014 timeframe.
Okay, excellent. So if I was at home purchasing my first home and I pulled a loan out for a 30-year mortgage and I had a home built, I certainly would hope it would last more than 30 years. So as we stand in this building right now, we got 24 years use out of it at the taxpayer's expense. So we can't go back and cry over spilled milk, right? I'm not here to talk about that. But that's where it comes down to the accountability aspect of the new building that we're building. So, you know, I just think that it would be important for the commission to be sure, and you, Mr. Frank, that whomever signs off on whatever particular changes that we make, that it's specifically noted. That way, if we do have potential issues in the future, we can come back and hold somebody accountable, because at the end of the day, the only person that was held accountable with this building was the taxpayer, right? Yeah, I think so. So, and then lastly, one of the things that I listened to when it came to their presentation about the buildings that I think that the commission should take very serious heed to was with this particular type of construction, there's going to be a very important aspect of it. And that's going to be the coating and the sealing of the exterior of the building upon its completion. And then what you're going to need to do, and as a commission, you should think about this seriously, is instead of painting or recoating every couple years, I would look at some kind of 20 or 30-year coating that you can put on the building, and then I would paint on a more regular basis through the first 5 years to help seal the building down to help further protect us in the long run. And I believe that the engineers had stated that that would be what they would do, if I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong? Yeah, so please make sure that whatever the budget is, that you make sure that you put in there the additional sealing and coatings over the next 5 years to help with the process, just to keep the building in better shape. That's it. That's all. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson. Do I hear a second?
No,
That's to pull.
All right, hold on. All right. What item?
Item 6, 7, 8, and 9. Just a few questions on them. Nothing really in-depth.
All right, 1, 2,
6, 7, 8, and 9.
all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, I also have
10.
a question.
Which
on-
ones?
Actually, it's just on 7.
Huh?
I think just 7. The other ones were answered.
All right, all right. All the rest, item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I need the motion made by Commissioner Wilson. Do I hear a second? Second by Commissioner Ferguson. No more comments? Let's vote on those. Those items passed unanimously. Now we'll start with item 6.
Item 6, quick question. In 2018, Care Here and Crown Consulting, they separated, and we had an option to go with one company or the other. There was another option to put out a RFP. Just wondering, why didn't we put out an RFP, and what led our decision to go right back with Crown Consulting without putting out an RFP? Because we knew they separated in 2018, we were 2019, so Just wondering why didn't we get an option to at least look at other companies out there that may be able to provide the same or better healthcare?
I guess I could answer that, and as a commission, you could do that anytime you want. It would involve, if we changed anything, changing all the doctors that everyone's become accustomed to, and possibly having a different company come in and have completely different formulary and those types of things. So, you know, it's been working well. The reason we've recommended to go back to Crown is that's who we originally were with, and they're an Ocoee company, and it was no choice of theirs when we were assigned to care here when the company separated. So we would much rather deal with a company that's literally a mile down the street than in Tennessee in order to keep our relationship going.
Great recommendation. Just maybe in the future, we could, if we run across issues like this, any way we may possibly look at other options, at least give us a long-term, give us some time to look at it and possibly look at additional options.
Well, we can always toss that out there as an option. It'd be fairly intensive to go out and try to figure if there's going to be any cost savings or anything like that. So we'd prefer if there was some interest, if you know, when we brought the item up, if there was a consensus, perhaps next year we want to do that, then that would be a lot easier on staff than going out and trying to, you know, gauge whether there's going to be any savings or what the interest would be or anything like that. It's just kind of like health insurance. It's a lot of effort to put that together and go out just to test the market.
Gotcha. Sounds like what we went through with the trash issue.
Yes, correct.
All right. Item number 7, how much was allocated during the fiscal year 2020 budget for item number 7?
Let Mark answer that.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, Mark Johnson, Parks and Rec. What was the question again?
We just want to know how much was allocated in the budget for item number 7. How much was allocated in the budget for fiscal year 2020 for item number 7?
There
That would be
this is all carryover capital. So there's nothing in the budget for this year. There was leftover money in past year's
Yeah,
capital.
but Mark, I think last year it was 125.
Yeah, 125 and then 75.
And 75. It
Yeah.
just carried over because it wasn't completed by last year.
So right, we're asking for approval to reappropriate. So that means we're taking money that was actually designated for one purpose, and now you want to move it for another
No,
purpose.
no.
But reallocation, that's what that means.
Yeah, it's probably not the correct word. Whatever goes in the capital budget, if they're doing research and it hasn't been spent, it gets carried over as a capital project. So commission approves all the capital projects. You originally approved this in the 2018-2019 budget, and it wasn't completed by the end of 2019 year. So the dollars were carried over and the project is carried over.
So how much we're looking at reappropriating or moving or shifting?
The same money is there for that same project. It's
Okay.
not coming from anywhere else. It's coming from the line item for that project, but it was in the 2018-2019 capital budget.
Okay, so it's carryover from there.
Correct. It's not
Okay.
a reallocation from something else. It's, like I said, that's not a correct term, I guess we would say.
Okay, but that's, I'm just a little confused by that. That term kind of threw me off.
Yeah, it's dollars that were actually allocated to that
So
project.
are we asking the commission now just to approve the use of money that we already have for? the
You've
same
already
project?
approved the money basically in the 18-19 year, but our purchasing policy and ordinance requires you to, because of the cost of it, to approve that.
Okay.
Well, I have a question on that as well. Talking about the same item, item 7. I have similar questions. I'm looking at, first of all, Director Johnson, thank you, because savings money is always a good thing.
Yes, sir.
I definitely love it when money is given back to the city for other uses. But I guess my question now is, with $103,000 or so, what triggers a bid for that level? Because initially this project, these two projects were for fencing and backstops.
Correct.
But now we're looking at using the balance left over for other stuff.
Correct.
So
So,
why are we bidding that? I don't understand how we
So-
just moving that money for, is that something that we can do? First of all, that's the first thing.
we're asking to have the money, so that basically we had the money left over. We finished the project cheaper than we could.
Right.
We had the money, so we want to, there's some upgrades to that complex that we can do. We want to, that rest of the money, because that money was earmarked just for fencing and backstops.
Correct.
So I want to reappropriate it to other things such as scoreboards, foul poles, turf, clay, dugout shade, spectator shade. that kind of-
And I agree with all that.
Yeah.
I think that's, in fact, I drove out there this evening or
See
earlier
the
today
fencing
just to
there.
see it.
Yeah.
But what it's being used for is really not my question.
Right.
How we can use it for that is my question.
That's the reason it's before you tonight. And once again, the reappropriation, it's not a good word. There were dollars put towards Project A and B. They were completed. There's money left over to be used for similar projects in parks and recreation. So,
So to draw that money back out of that fund, wherever it may be, have gone back into, or never left in this case,
correct.
what do we as a commission have to do to ensure that we're doing it properly? And not just saying, yeah, let's vote on it, we can just go ahead and allow that money to be used, even for the same field.
First of all, there's a purchasing code that details all that, and then we have a full-time purchasing agent who, and you can ask any of the directors, she pretty much keeps them in line, and she tells them exactly what they can do and what they can't do, and when they do have to go to a bid, or when they can use a piggyback and that type of thing. She's very well versed in that, so it receives several levels of review, and the finance director signs off on all these things. The department head, the finance director, the purchasing agent, sometimes the city attorney. It goes through several levels of review before it gets to me, and I sign off on it too. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
It does answer the part that someone looked at it, but I don't know if it answers the question, is it something that either violates or does not violate our policy? Because we're looking at $100,000.
Right, no, it doesn't violate any policies, and that's why it's before you tonight. We wouldn't bring anything forth that violates any policies, and I can tell you the finance director and the purchasing agent have looked at this and told Mark that him and his staff can move forward with bringing this to the commission. But because of one of the rules within our capital, within the purchasing ordinance as far as capital, is if you spend the money on the capital project and you have some money left over, that's all well and good, and a lot of times we'll want to use that on something else. But because those remaining dollars aren't specifically allocated for what you said, the city commission decides, yes, you can spend those dollars and use them on turf and those types of things.
Okay, and that
From a
answers
financial
my question.
standpoint, everything's in line with the purchasing ordinance. However, and we get back to, I think, possibly the reallocation word, you're not really reallocating dollars, you're taking extra dollars that were left over, and you're using those to purchase additional items.
Okay, yeah, and I had tried to get an answer to that prior to it.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Item number 8, just read quickly through item number 8. We want to add some security cameras in Central Park, which I think is great. It's really good, to the tune of about $61,000. The only question I have is, did we budget for that in our budgeting cycle that we just went through for the $61,000?
This is from a past budget, capital year budget. So this is from, I want to say, 17, 18, it's carried over.
Okay, so this is actually money that we've already had.
We had that I'm trying to implement now and use it and get the cameras in there.
What was is there a GL item for this type of things when we have issues where we have money that's being carried over? Does it go into a big pot? Does it go back into that GL account, or does it go to a sub-GL account?
Into a capital account specifically allocated for that project only.
Okay. All right. So the money that we're getting ready to use now, we've already allocated this for these cameras.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And you just need to vote so we can go ahead and use the money.
Yeah, because of the price.
Perfect. thank you. And last item is, I just needed to know, how much did we exceed in the amount for, I think it was the uniforms, or item number 9, I believe? It says that we actually exceeded our single vendor amount by a certain amount.
So we're allowed to purchase from one vendor up to $50,000. And we usually, our uniforms are everything you see here, and some of the things, like my bulletproof vest. We have a different vendor that we sometimes go to that has a lower price. This year, we got it all at one place, so it drove the price up, as well as fire department and Parks and Rec get some equipment there. That's all the city from one vendor, which drives the price up. So now piggybacking off the Orlando contract.
Okay, so we exceeded that amount, so now we just need to cover the difference.
No, we're budgeted for that amount, but we purchased from one vendor more than 50,000. We're budgeted up to $94,500. We're well below our budget, but above the amount for a single vendor.
A single vendor?
Yeah.
Correct. So my question is, how much do we exceed
50,
that amount?
it has to come to the city commission at over 50. So I think, Charlie, it's 89,000?
Yes,
total?
89, we went to 89,800.
Okay, so we're looking at about 20 some odd,
Almost 20,000.
$30,000 that we went over. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
But basically, it's from putting a bunch of different departments into the same vendor.
Correct.
You also mentioned here that there was options that you put out. You had piggyback, because this was actually the title was approval of the piggyback. So you'll recommend the piggyback as opposed to the sole source or the 3 quotes.
Well, the sole source we don't want to do unless it's the only place we can get something from.
Okay.
Typically, City of Orlando, for a uniform contract, they're going to get a much better deal than we would. So if we went out and we bid that out ourselves, we would expect to have prices higher than that. We typically wouldn't want to piggyback on a contract that a smaller town or smaller city has bid out because, we figure we could probably get a better deal with the number of employees.
And we do that for other things, other equipment, radios, firearms.
A lot of county ones. We'll piggyback off county and counties around the state because typically if one county does something, they'll typically share it too. Why keep reinventing the wheel? And even some of the smaller counties are going to be significantly larger than us as far as their purchasing.
All right, so our single vendor purchasing authority is 50,000?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks,
Yep.
Steve.
All right, need a motion for 6, 7, 8, and 9.
I'll make a motion that we approve 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Motion made by Commissioner Oliver, do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Brennan. All in favor? Motion carries with 4, with Commissioner Wilson absent. We'll take a 5-minute break, 5 minutes.
I get stiff sitting down. Once I move around, get the juices
number 12.
Let's shoot for the 11th, because the kids get out of school
Early, yeah.
in that way. So tentatively, I'll pass the word to Ms. McKenzie, then we shoot for the
Okay.
11th.
All right, Tony, sorry, took a long time.
It was interesting.
Appreciate it.
How are you?
Appreciate it.
No problem. We had,
First reading. Yeah. Maybe they don't want to go home. Because we've been here for a little while.
All right, let's go. Drag it up. Drag it up.
It's done.
Yeah, we are. Move right along.
I know.
Soon as Jeff does it.
Okay. Wow, this place cleared out.
All right. Back on. Is the TV?
A few days.
Is it, where's that guy? He leave? It's on. All right, it's on. All right, we're gonna go to everybody ready?
Yeah.
Public hearing, none. We're gonna go to first reading of this ordinance. Number 15, first reading of ordinance, amending and restating in full the City of Ocoee Municipal General Employees Retirement Trust Fund. Municipal Pension Board Chairman, Ms. Cow.
This is just first reading. I'll go ahead and read the ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Ocoee, Florida relating to the City of Ocoee Municipal General Employees Retirement Trust Fund, adopted by ordinance number 2009-20, as subsequently amended, amending section 1 definitions by amending the definition of credited service and spouse, amending section 2 membership, amending section 14 maximum pension, amending section 16 miscellaneous provisions, amending section 24 reemployment after retirement, amending section 25 deferred retirement option plan, providing for severability of provisions, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
All right. So the next commission meeting scheduled for December 17th will be when we bring this back for the second reading and the public hearing. December 17th, 2019. All right. Item number 16. Thanks for staying, G. Chairman. Sorry about that. First reading of ordinance amending the City of Ocoee Municipal Police Officers and Firefighters Retirement Trust Fund reflecting Internal Revenue Code changes and CBA revisions from previous years. Chief Brown.
This is also first reading of an ordinance of the City of Ocoee, Florida relating to the City of Ocoee Municipal Police Officers and Firefighters Retirement Trust Fund, amending ordinance number 2010-19, subsequently amended. Amending section 1 definitions by amending the definition of credited services, amending section 7 pre-retirement death, amending section 8 disability, amending section 9 vesting, amending section 15 maximum pension, amending section 17 miscellaneous provisions, amending section 27 deferred retirement option plan, amending section 28 reemployment after retirement, amending section 30 supplemental benefit component for special benefits, chapters 175 and 185 share accounts, providing for severability of provisions, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date.
All right, same thing. The second reading will be, public hearing will be scheduled for December 17th, 2019, the regular commission meeting, 6:15. All right. Go to second reading of ordinance, public hearing, second reading of ordinance for DACA property, 8807 Hackney Prairie Road, annexation and rezoning project. Development Service Director Rumer.
Thank you, Mayor. This is real quick. This is property on Hackney Prairie Road, seeking annexation. A couple meetings past, the commission, we annexed the property behind it as part of that drainage issue, the piece that the city bought. This is the property in front. The property was purchased by a local businessman in Ocoee, and he wants to continue to invest his money in Ocoee. He bought this property, which happened to be in front of the piece we have purchased ourselves. So this is annexation for right now, and we're working with him to get him water down the road. But initially, this is annexation and bringing the zoning to R1A, and he's working towards getting water. It's a little bit distance to get it to him, but we're working, utilities working to devise a plan for that. Staff recommends approval. It's in our new joint planning area agreement, which was adopted by the county today, and it meets the criteria. Thank you.
All right, you have it, read.
Yeah, this is the second reading of ordinance 2019-35, an ordinance of the City of Ocoee, Florida, annexing into corporate limits of the City of Ocoee, Florida, certain real property containing approximately 2.13 acres located on the north side of Hackney Prairie Road, approximately 2,683 feet east of North Clark Road, pursuant to the application submitted by the property owner, finding said annexation to be consistent with the Ocoee Comprehensive Plan, the Ocoee City Code, providing for and authorizing the updating of official city maps, providing direction to the city clerk, providing for severability, repealing inconsistent ordinances, and providing for an effective date.
All right.
Need a motion?
We'll open the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. Anybody in the public have any comments on item 17? No comments from the public? We'll move it back to the dais. Anybody on the dais have any comments on item 17? All right, I need a motion first for second reading of annexation ordinance.
I'd like to make a motion on the second reading of annexation ordinance.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Second by Commissioner Wilson. First made by Commissioner Oliver, second by Commissioner Wilson. Any more comments? If not, let's vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, I need a motion on second reading of rezoning.
I'd like to make a second, I'd like to make a motion on the second reading. I'm
Gotta
sorry.
read it.
Gotta read it, I'm sorry.
I thought you did read it.
Nah, I'm
Hey,
slow.
falling down.
An ordinance of the City of Ocoee, Florida, changing the zoning classification from Orange County A1 Rural Agricultural to City of Ocoee R1A, single-family dwelling on certain real property containing approximately 2.13 acres located on the north side of Hackney Prairie Road, approximately 2,683 feet east of North Clark Road, pursuant to the application submitted by the property owner. Findings said zoning to be consistent with the Ocoee Comprehensive Plan, providing for and authorizing the revision of the official city zoning map, repealing inconsistent ordinances, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
All right, now I need a second. Now I gotta open, I opened the public hearing for both of them. So now I need a motion on that.
No, so do it
Go
again.
ahead and open the public
I'm
hearing.
gonna open the public hearing again for item second reading of rezoning ordinance. No comments? Close it, come back to the dais. I need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion on the second reading of the rezoning ordinance.
I second it.
Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Seconded. Commissioner Brinson?
Yes.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Oliver, seconded by Commissioner Brinson. No more comments? Let's vote. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 18, second reading of ordinance, amending the Land Development Code, Article 3, subsection A, subsection 3-2, regarding an alternate board member on the Planning and Zoning Commission, Land Planning Agency, Development Services Director, Rumer.
Yes, Mayor, when we were filling a spot from an opening for a planning and zoning member, which has a total of 5, we had 2 applicants. The commission selected Mr. Lumnick as the P&Z member and then selected the second person, Lou, as the 4Gs as an alternate and directed staff to come back with an ordinance making the alternate member a part of the Planning and Zoning Commission, where they, in this ordinance, have the expectation to attend the meetings, participate in the discussion. They just, with a full quorum, will not be able to vote, but they will be able to be a part of the process and of course, be there if a member has to abstain or if a member is absent. So this is what this ordinance effectively does. And you've already appointed Mr. Liu as the alternate.
This is an ordinance of the City of Ocoee, Florida, amending subsection A of Section 3-2 of the City of Ocoee Land Development Code relating to the Planning and Zoning Commission, allowing the mayor and city commissioners to designate one alternate board member to the Planning and Zoning Commission, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date.
All right, I will open the public hearing. Anybody in the public have any comments on the item 18? All right, close it, bring it back. All right, do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Motion made by Commissioner
Second
Wilson.
it.
Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Second by Commissioner Brinson. No more comments? Let's vote. All right, regular agenda, item number 19, discussion and direction regarding property located at 441 Baskin Ridge Court. City Attorney Cookson.
Mayor, we want to know if it's okay if we can actually table this item for the next meeting. It may draw up some discussion in the interest of time. We just want to know if we can possibly do some more due diligence on this particular item and bring it back for the next meeting.
Well, I'll ask the staff first.
Yes.
Yeah, Mayor, this was something that you had all discussed and asked us to bring back. The city attorney did some research on it, and actually, actually, we have just recently gotten the information that you had requested, so that's fine if we want to bring it back. I don't think city attorney has an issue with it, do you?
No, not at all.
Is this the property we bought for the,
This is
It's the African-American Cemetery.
African-American Cemetery.
oh, okay. So we're gonna put it off to the next meeting. We need a motion for that?
Yes, let's move it to date certain.
It was published in the agenda, so
I'd
a
say
motion might
by
be
the first meeting in January.
Yeah, I think
all right?
that would probably be appropriate. yes.
Covers it. First meeting in January. Do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we reschedule the discussion on the direction regarding the property located at 441 Baskin Ridge Court until the first meeting in January of 2020.
I'll second that.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wilson. Any more discussion? Let's vote. All right, staff items.
Nothing, Mayor.
Imagine that. Commissioner Branson?
Just one comment. In my limited capacity, because I've been limping around, I've been still getting some emails from some of the concerned citizens, but I actually started getting some comments from citizens saying that we're doing a great job. So I just wanted to make sure that I relayed that on to the commission, that a lot of the residents think even with some of our ranting and raving up here, that they appreciate what we do, and they understand that it takes effort to do that. And again, in the last couple of months, I've been going through it a little bit. So I do thank the city of Ocoee as well as the commission for all their support.
Commissioner Wilson?
It does take effort. Yes, couple things. First of all, I'd like to just go over again that Santa will be visiting the neighborhoods. Please, the unwrapped gifts. Great for our children in need in the program in the city of Ocoee. So please, if you can, be generous, and please watch for Santa. It's a great program. The folks go out and they make a lot of noise in the neighborhood and let you know they're there. So please support that program. The other item I'd like to bring up that I think at our last meeting we discussed the possibility of canceling the second meeting, which is December 17th, if there wasn't anything that was time sensitive. We discussed, I believe at the last meeting, the possibility, I believe we're going to talk about it tonight. If there isn't anything time sensitive that Rob knows or anything that would, any anticipated action, is there any problem with our supporting canceling the next meeting? I know for all of us, December's probably gotten very busy with all the activities around the city, and I'm going to make the motion that we would cancel, if there is nothing time sensitive.
There's nothing time sensitive.
Cancel the December 17th meeting.
Is there anything?
What about the pension thing? Can we move that?
Yeah, they can wait, Mayor. They're both internal issues, and they're just something that has to be done at some point.
Chairman, sitting back in the back.
We have two people, both Charlie
Is that,
and...
and Chairman Chief, is that good? First meeting in January. Huh?
Couldn't hear you.
Oh, Lord.
It has been advertised as all, and we can reschedule. We're bringing our attorney. It's the same attorney as the general
So it's okay?
pension. I would believe it's okay, yes.
I mean, we just don't want to cause, we don't want to cause something that's time sensitive or going to be a problem.
We've been waiting for some time already. It's not going to change anything.
All right.
Okay, I mean, that's just a suggestion.
You're not retiring next week, so it won't bother you. So.
That's
All
just
right.
a suggestion, it's up to the
Mayor,
commission.
we previously announced as items 15 and 16 that the second reading would be on December 17th, 2019. So I
Well,
think we just
notify
need to say, what's the January meeting?
January
8th.
January 7th. I have January 7th.
Hold on a minute.
January 7th. January 7th.
Is there any problem? I mean, it's up to the commission. if they-
January the 7th.
It's up to the commission, but I'm just thinking we did discuss it last meeting, and
January 7th. Is that all right? Can we notify Melody? Or
Yeah,
those items?
I'm just gonna contact the West Orange Times
Okay.
Star. We could
motion's made. I hear a second.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner First. Any more comments? Let's vote. Merry Christmas.
I guess I should, I'm sorry, I don't turn around, but I'm assuming it passed, okay.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I will just say, look forward to be back in here on December 7th at a 5:15 meeting. That's going to be our workshop,
I'll
correct?
be there, but I'm just going to be in together.
Maybe our workshop.
I think that's a waste.
First workshop.
The first workshop.
Good luck with that.
Okay.
Good luck with that.
You're not
Thank
going to
you.
talk?
Thank
Is that
you.
what you said? You're not going to talk?
No. I'm gonna have to do it again. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'll be handling the gavel and
And so there's no problem doing that, correct? You're saying you have a
I
workshop,
just think
Scott?
you're gonna find out. All right. You through?
I'm through, thank
All right,
you.
Commissioner First.
No, I don't have anything to say.
Commissioner Oliver.
In light of the healthy discussions that we had tonight, Frederick Douglass once said that without struggle, there is no progress. I think we've made some progress tonight, despite of what some may think, but I think that we've made some healthy progress through some healthy conversation. Since we won't be meeting on December 17th, I want to tell everyone to have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and be safe during the holidays.
All right. I'm gonna call the meeting. I'm gonna ask the Founder's Day Board to come together. I wanna talk to them about, I've had a lot of citizens ask me about keeping Founder's Day, because Founder's Day is not to deal with the names of founders, but to deal with the city date. It's just called the city was founded. And I talked to the city manager about it, and I really didn't want to change it, but I've had a lot of citizens, even my neighbor called me and said they don't want to change it. But I want to go with the board, I want to meet with all the different people that we have on the board that volunteers and helps, that works for the city and works for the volunteer, and see if we can come up and maybe change the name. I have no problem with the name change. We've changed the dates around, we found that out tonight. No, there's no confusion, where everybody gets to talk. Listen, if you were here years ago with us and the other mayor, you'd find out there was some yippee-yi-yay days and times in there, so. But I talked to the grandson, or great-grandson outside. I went out and talked to him, and he said it's fine, we'll do it on that weekend. And I think they're gonna join in and participate with our group, is what he was saying. So that's another thing, I have got to get that, keep that name for to give them. None, right?
None.
None.
None. Yeah, well, I had a principal named None. He liked the title. But I think it is good process to discuss things and come through things, and I don't know if there's ever a time when you don't. In 33 years of being involved with government, there's a lot of times that I've sat and not liked what somebody was doing. But when it all comes down to it, it's about the betterment of the city and what the city's doing, and just like he was saying about people. I know people argue with other things, so as long as we come out and we all try to work with each other, not separately, I think we'll be at a good point. And that's what I try to do. Sometimes it's not, sometimes things happen. But I do say that there is a lot of citizens that like Founder's Day, and I'm gonna see if we can change the name. But I'm gonna ask the group that has been doing it for a long time, and if they wanna do that, we'll do it. But I didn't wanna jump on none of that stuff, Commissioner Oliver, last time, because I knew Bill wanted to do that presentation himself. So I didn't wanna get in on it and then him get mad at me because I tried to jump the gun and say the stuff. So they've worked the dates out, and I do believe, talking to Mr. Nunn, that it's gonna be a joint deal. So we'll look forward to that, and I think next year will be, it won't be long. It'll be a great time. All right, so we won't have another meeting till January 7th. Hope everybody has a Merry Christmas.